All right, y'all. Welcome to All Politics are Local, America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. Y'all know if it's Friday, y'all know it's time for All Politics are Local. So tonight, of course, we're gonna get started. Y'all know it's the third Friday, so it is the mayor's forum. So touch bases with the mayor this week. So uh, he's going to be on tonight, provided there's no issues with his schedule or no emergencies in the city. So we expect him to come up first at 6 o'clock, and at seven, Zaid, what we got coming up?
I do. I'm familiar with the organization. They do very important work. Imagine they've just moved to Newark within the last year. They're based in Mountainside. They do what we call grief counseling and grief support, uh, grief trauma support. I'm not familiar with the executive director. I've met other personnel, but I've always wanted to do more to engage this particular entity. So we're looking forward to this conversation with the executive director of Imagine, uh, who's now here in Newark, and a very under the radar important part of our community based violence intervention system ecosystem here in Newark. Behind that, at 7:30 on another level, right? We talk about the folks that do all the work on the ground in terms of community-based violence intervention. Some of this sometimes, our folks doing this work get some very important strategic help from national organizations who bring in a different kind of clout, different kind of visibility, a different set of resources, and a different set of credibility. The Giffords Foundation, led by Gabby Giffords, former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, who was
Mhm.
literally shot in the head and survived. In her survival, she built out one of the strongest anti-gun gun violence lobbies in the country, and they support this work that we do here, making peace. Jordan Costa, who is a young voice in that circle, will be one of our guests from that national partner. The Health Alliance Against Violence Intervention, better known as the HAVI, have been very instrumental in helping us do this work at the point of contact that is the hospital. I get popped, don't get killed, but at the hospital, right? That someone who does hospital-based violence intervention work, right, might be one of the first people I see to help me figure out my next steps and how to survive the ordeal I went through. The Javi is a national voice, gives life and strength to that whole thing. And then who do we have after that at 8 o'clock? You're muted. And the mayor has just joined us too. Good to see you back, beloved.
Yes, sir.
And then, of course, at 8, we're going to have Larry Hamm,
Oh,
the
David's back.
chairman of the
Yes,
People's Organization for Progress.
yes. And of course, 8:30, our hip hop Rhino wind up with DJ Rhino. Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
And
Well,
then
look
DJ.
who's back.
Yeah. Peace, man.
What's going on?
Hey, brother, you, man. You know, I mean, man. I don't know if you feel like this, right? But back in the day when I was boxing, and and I know that after the fights, right? You know, like if you had a fight and you didn't win that fight that night, right? One of the things for me, I don't know about you, but I can tell you about boxing. I used to like to just be by myself, right? Just to kind of have some moments to kind of to reflect on, everything that kind of went down, because the punch that knocks you out, man, is the one you don't see. That's what they tell you in boxing, right? And from my perspective, right, like, you know, and I know I text you and sort of said this, for me, I just sort of thought that I was listening to a lot of a lot of the different preachers I was talking to, and and everybody was saying that, like Boyer, who was talking last night. One of the things that he was saying was if we could just organize the preachers, and if the preachers could just organize their congregations, we had nothing to worry about, right? nothing. And you know, and that the mayor, you know, was a shoe-in. And I got to tell you, man, I'm still disappointed, man.
Well, listen, I'm gonna tell you. Listen, I've had my share of alone moments after them losses too. After my uncle would cuss me the hell out because we wasn't supposed to lose when we did lose. But to your point, all clergy ain't created equal, unfortunately.
So what say you, man?
Huh?
So what say you, man?
No, I think we did pretty good, man. You know, we won Essex County, we won Union County, almost won Passaic County, the county that Trump won. We almost won that, you know. So I think we did good, man. We know we had $6 million. Philip had 20. Sean Spiller spent 40. I mean, these guys spent a whole lot of money out here, man.
$40 million.
Yeah. And yeah. And Mikey had spent a lot of money as well and had the organization of the party.
Right.
You know. And you know, we just needed a little bit more money and a little bit more time, man. Or one or the other, and we would have made it happen. But you know, the momentum was coming later. And he's right. Boyer was right, though. He wasn't wrong. You just needed to get all these Negroes on board, and it's hard to do that, you know?
Yes, sir.
Boyer wasn't wrong. He was right on the money. You could see that. You could see that. You know, everybody hedging their bets. They just don't, they're not believers. A lot of people like their position more than they like power.
Yeah, and you know, I was listening to, you know, because he fired up the crowd last night, man, at the PAC, you know, after you and
Boyer spoke?
Yeah,
too.
Boyer was on one of the panels.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
I was gone by then, man. I told Ryan I had to drop it and get out of there.
Yeah, you did that, man. You did that, and people were fired up, and you know, even Brother Muhammad, the brother who was, you know, the messenger's grandson, who you know was was moderating, huh?
Young scholar too, by the way.
Yeah, as he was moderating, you know, I mean, the crowd was fired up, and he said it right. He said, you know, a lot of us were still feeling some type of way because, you know, that was our governor. We wanted you to be our governor, you know.
Yeah.
And we were feeling some type of way. You know, I mean, listen, man. You know, we can talk about whatever you want to talk about, man. But at the end,
that's all good.
You know, I just, you know, I mean, I got at some people who, you know, I most certainly, and I heard you say it, but I got at some people because I was just stunned by some of the people who didn't support our campaign. You know what I'm saying? And that stunned me, man.
Yeah, these people not free, man. They're just not free.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line, man. It's not complicated. You know, they're just not free. And, you know, at the end of the day, you know, these guys, the terrible thing about it is that these people say it in the beginning that the black elected officials not going to be together. There's some people up and down the state who, if they would have came out and we'd have had a united front up and down the state
from the beginning,
it would have been over. I mean, you got people in all of these cities and counties up and down the state who went the other way. I'm talking about black people.
Yes.
Right.
You know, who were scared and had an opportunity to do it and wouldn't do it. That's why I said at the thing that, you know, our obstacle to getting reparations is not the people who oppose it, is the people who are scared to demand it.
Yes. We saw that in California. We saw that and I'm very disappointed in Maryland. A lot of folks in Maryland overrode somebody's veto.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, that's very
I mean,
clear.
that's what it is, man. It's very clear to me. I mean, you got all these guys. One of the elected officials called me before they came out to support Mikey and started asking me questions about my policies. And I was like, huh? Like, prior to all of this, you know, every event and things that we have, you're doing this, you're doing that, you're supporting what we're doing. You asking me my policies as an excuse to say that you're going to go with Mikey Sherrill when you know damn well what my policies are.
Indeed.
You know what I mean? You don't know any of her policies because not only does she hasn't done much, you know, during that, You know, she didn't say what her policies were, but at the end of the day, listen, we need to make sure Chitterelli loses, so they know that.
There you go.
They know that, and so everybody got to do what they got to do. But you know, I don't want to hate on her. I'm just saying that, you know, these guys, they know damn well, you know, what my policies were, what I believed in, what I was for. They knew what it was when I was supporting them.
Right.
How about that?
Right. You know, man.
They didn't stand up. They didn't stand up.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, I'm not speaking for you, man. I'm gonna speak for myself. You know, it's hard though, man, for me to enter in some of the rooms with these cats, man. You know what I'm saying? You know, now. And that's because remember when they didn't have no power at all, and they would come through the show, we would help as much as we could, and then when push come to shove about them supporting our brother, you know, I mean, you know, listen, man, I'm not saying they have to have your pedigree. No, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that, you know, if we're talking about a united front and us having an opportunity to actually win the first black governorship, I mean, Rock said it best. Rock said to me, well, he said on the show last week, you remember this, Zaid, when he was on, he said he think that the party bosses would have forgave them, just saying this time around, I got to stick with my brother. They would. Yeah. But they didn't.
They don't have enough courage to do that. And they don't have no imagination. And that's what I was talking about at the thing. You know, the first thing oppression takes from you is your imagination, your ability to see yourself in a place other than slavery. They take that imagination away from you. They can't see it. And because they can't see it, they can't do it, right? They feel like it's not going to happen. We don't have enough power. We don't have enough force. We don't have enough people. And they always keep you in a position where you're thinking that you can't win, that you're not electable. And right. then so they get scared and they don't do it. Then you got people who's supposed to be progressive were out here saying that too, or he's not electable. And really what they're saying is they're not going to elect black people. And these are progressives that are saying this.
Yes.
Saying, oh, they're not going to elect black people. Well, what is the work that you have been doing in your community to make sure that they do elect black people? Right? And why would you be saying that now? You know, that's a full-on admittance that you think the state is too racist. That's what that's what they're saying. So
yeah,
the reality is we got a lot of work to do, man. And look, the party is super divided, and these people have to see that they have to bring people together. Because if they don't bring us together, and excite this base, like I've been saying the whole entire time, that this base has to be excited. People got to feel like they need to come out, that they want to come out. You got to get people to the polls who ain't been in a long time. They got to feel like this is it. Like, and right now that we don't have that level of momentum.
We don't,
and it has to be built that way. You know,
we don't have that momentum, and you know, this current crop of people that are around now claiming they support Mikey Sherrill, I'm gonna tell you, man, they ain't the people, brother. They just aren't, and you know, they can't. Listen, man, I'm saying this, you not saying this, but I'm telling you, she can't win without you, right? She can't win without you. They none of them cats, right? Yeah. None of them cats, man, have the ability to fire up the Democratic base in the state of New Jersey the way you do, right? Nobody. And if it wasn't for racism and white supremacy, right, and self-hate, you'd be the primary candidate today, brother. Right? And that's just true. Let me read something to you, man, that I saw in the New York Times today, and then I'll tell you on the end of it who it is, but I want you to listen to this. The mayor of blank is uniquely positioned to play an important role in the future of the National Democratic Party. Mr. Blank said in a statement, adding that Mr. Blank had the, quote, experience, credentials, and character, not just to serve blank, but also have some but also can help save the nation. End quote. Now, let me tell you something, man. If that doesn't sound like Mayor Baraka, I have no idea who it sounds like. Let me tell you.
I'm
Let me
talking
tell you.
talking about Barack Obama.
No, no. This is James Claiborne
Oh,
issuing today. He issued this in the New York Times as an endorsement for Cuomo. And what he's saying is that why
wow,
he's qualified to
Here
be
we
the
go.
mayor of New York is
Here we go.
because of
Oh,
his experience, his credentials, and his character to not just save New York, but also to help save the nation.
that's him.
wow,
Right? This is
And you know, we've been there before with him. You know, because he what he did in the South, particularly
wow,
in his area, for Joe Biden. Joe Biden was on the ropes. We could have Bernie Sanders running against Donald Trump the first time,
right.
right? A
wow,
shift to the left, broadening the base. He did
wow.
that. He played that.
Clyburn said that. I couldn't
Yeah,
get that Negro to endorse me for governor either. He came to our event. He came to my event, gave me some money, but he wouldn't come out. They're not gonna come out against the party. The party supported her, so party folks gonna come out and support. The party supports Cuomo. It's clear. So they're gonna come out and do that. That's what it is.
and Cuomo's got some real challenges from the left.
Yeah, he does.
Real surprising, healthy challenges from the
Yeah,
left. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Sometimes people walk past the bosses of the Democratic Party and vote anyway.
yeah,
We had to go through that with Obama.
yeah.
They were lined up for Hillary.
They were.
Remember that?
All of them.
You
They
know?
were. They absolutely were.
Yeah.
They lined up to support Hillary.
People walk right past them, went to the polls and voted for Mr. Basketball player. That's what they did.
But what I want you to see though, man, is what he says is the reason why he thinks that. He says it's his experience, his credentials,
Uh,
and character to not
I know.
just serve New York, right? But also help save the nation.
Save the nation.
I mean, think about that.
That's a bit much. That's
And
way
that,
over the top.
yeah,
Yeah, and that's how he gets down. That's how
yeah,
he
That's way over the top.
yeah.
These
And
guys, they just party loyalists, man. That's
Yeah.
what it is, man. Honestly, they're gonna do what they can for the party to win. That's their perspective. I understand why they're doing that. The problem is the party does not as loyal to us as we are to them,
right, right.
That,
and
that,
that's
may, that may be an understatement for some of us.
right. They just not. I mean, it's just not. I mean, if you can see what's going on in New Jersey, like the problems we dealing with, that's getting worse under Democratic leadership. I mean, these people, they, and that's why people say that the party takes us for granted, that
Yeah.
this thing, that thing, all this other kind of stuff, right? Because they can win over and over again and not do anything for us.
Yeah, totally.
And we don't have the courage to stand on our own.
Yeah.
We'll halfway go there. We'll go halfway there. We talk a good game. We support Juneteenth. We do all these other things, but we're not going, like I said about the thing last night, the county of Essex, which less than 1% of the dollars come to Black businesses. We get statues, monuments, busts, buildings named after us, but we ain't getting no contracts,
That's
no
right.
money, no housing, no nothing. You just,
the most pivotal counties in this part of the country.
just stay in the back.
Yeah.
We'll give your wife a job, your son a job, but we're not giving no wealth to people.
Nothing representational of your
Yeah.
presence.
Right. We're not going to change
Face of democratic
how we do
pluralism.
business. No.
Right.
We take you and that's it. And that's usually what they do. They take, that's why you got these guys that got to come out and do what they got to do, because they employ their whole family.
Wow. Wow.
Their whole family is employed by these people.
Wow.
And so they really caught up between the rock and the hard place. They want to support you, but they can't. And the crazy thing is the people are not with them. So all of those people who they got in Essex County to come out and not support me, to support them, we beat their cities.
You're right. That's right.
By a large margin.
That's right.
Black, and what Rock was saying in the beginning was right. You can't get those people in those cities to vote against me for somebody else like that. It's not going to happen.
That's right.
And they lost. The mayor of Hillside, they lost. Irvington, East Orange, lost. All those cities, the people came out and supported somebody else. They lost.
Right.
They lost. And they got the people and the other folks in Newark to do the same thing. We beat them and beat them in their wards. We beat East Orange. We beat the entire county of Essex by 6,000 votes.
Yep.
6,000 votes is a lot.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, and Union County, I mean, they don't have working class, black and brown and young people in this state. They just don't have them. They don't have them.
Yeah,
and they need to realize that and develop a strategy. If I was them, I wouldn't be arrogant. I told these people when Barack Obama won the nomination, in his acceptance speech, he dedicated like 5 to 10 minutes talking about Hillary Clinton, talking about how great she was, how smart of a person she was, gave us some accolades, talking about her husband, talking about how great of a run she did. He did all of that because he knew that after this was said and done, that he needed her in order to consolidate the base to beat, the election, the general election. He knew that. He put all that stuff down, put his ego aside, humbled himself, and opened up his arms. These people can't do that. It's difficult for them to do it. They have to, and I'm not saying the candidate herself, but it's the people around these folks who are angry. They're angry that you even got votes. You know what I mean? They run around here gloating, so forth and so on. They need to shut that down. They just shut it down. It's over. And figure out, because what's at stake is huge. It's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge. Even if I want to be upset about it, like, it's huge. If you let these people win and Trump's agenda becomes New Jersey's agenda, we the ones gonna get hurt.
Yeah.
Not those people. We gonna get hurt.
And then that is not an abstraction either.
Right.
That.
Yeah, they're gonna hurt us. They're not gonna hurt none of the other people we talking about.
And they're looking forward to doing it too.
Yeah, they're gonna hurt us. Absolutely. That's what they want to do. Take away your resources, your funding, from schools to healthcare, to community-based programming, to violence interventions. Everything you're doing is finished. I'm telling you.
You know, man, you're absolutely right. But here's the thing, man. I wrote this, after the numbers came in, and I was responding to something that Haas had put up, on his Facebook page. The problem for us, though, man, and this is true, because this has happened to Black folks, but particularly I remember as a child, when Jimmy Carter ran for president, my father would always say, "We've got to vote for the lesser of two evils." Right?
Yeah.
That's always the reality for us, man. And it's like, you're like, when does that, when does that shit stop, man? It's like, if in our minds, and in our hearts, if we know and in our spirit and the God in us, that we know that Mayor Baraka is not only the best candidate, he's the most qualified. If you follow all of that stuff that James Clyburn just laid out, then what the hell is going on? Let's take the party bosses out of it. What the hell is going on with these Negroes? Like what is that about, man? Like, I get the self-hate part, and I get what you're saying when you say, "Oh, these cats' jobs and their families and all of that." But I'm like, when does that stuff end, man? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like when does it end? Because
And
you
only
can't
until we make it in. You're right. I mean, people don't have. People have to have the courage, and I think really what this did more than anything is we struck at these people, and now they look very vulnerable. And I think that gives people courage, because they look vulnerable. They were vulnerable, and people saw that, right? They saw their vulnerabilities. You know, you went to fight Mike Tyson and you knocked him down. You know what I mean? You lost the fight, but you knocked him down, and so he looks vulnerable. So more people want to get into the fight now. They're like, "Oh, I'll take that fight." You know what I mean? Uh, and that's what you got to keep doing. You got to chip at these people until we show people that the emperor doesn't have on any clothes, that they're vulnerable and they could be beat. We don't understand that. We just don't see it. So most of the questions I got about my electability came from black people.
Wow.
In the beginning, definitely. That's why I said the momentum was coming. It had come, but it was coming later. Like when I was going to doors in Maplewood, and a couple of weeks before the campaign, people were coming out of their houses across the streets, bringing their kids. We had like impromptu meet and greets on people's porches, on their grass. People was coming across, to talk to me. I went to Montclair to the No Kings rally. A white woman came up to me and started crying, man. Real crocodile, real tears, brother. Started saying, "I wanted you to win. I'm sorry you didn't win," so forth and so on. I mean, these people were dependent on us to do something, right? And that's the reality. And people will and the irony is that people always question, "Oh, can you get white votes?" When I was going around the state, these white folks were excited about this candidacy, man. I was in Red Bank with 150 people in the back of a Mexican restaurant, brother. All white folks. I was in places that I never even heard. I was in Tewksbury, New Jersey, the Saturday before the election, in Hunterdon County, in a backyard with no black people at all, about 40 or 50 of them. Gave me a standing ovation back there. The only people that doubt us is us.
Wow.
That's a fact, man. And that people can't tell me about what's going on in the state. I experienced this stuff. I've seen it. I was in Lawrence, New Jersey, a backyard full of folks that was a mixed crowd, or in the backyard, in West Orange. And these folks, they were ready to go, man. They was fired up and ready to go. I'm telling you, it's just we have to organize our community in such a way that we got to come out hard.
Yeah,
and we just don't do it. Right? There's an event coming up on the 28th that we're doing with Al Sharpton and some other folks in Trenton at Reverend Boyer's church, towards a black agenda. And there's a bunch of leaders across the state coming. I mean, we got to start talking hard and strong to these people, man. Some of these people are already making deals with Chitterelli. I'm telling you right now.
Oh yeah.
I know this for a fact.
Some of the haters who we know. Yes. Oh yes.
For a fact. I mean, some of these people are heads of serious organizations. I mean, they're going to make deals with Chitterelli, because, that's just who they are. And the reality is they was lukewarm. Look, we had an NAACP forum, a gubernatorial NAACP forum. They asked us everything except things about black people. When we went to the audience asked those questions, but they didn't have any prepared questions about black folks. Not one. That's a problem. If you don't care about yourself, how are other people going to care about you?
If you don't respect yourself, you sure as hell ain't going to get the respect.
It's ridiculous. The only forum I went to, it was only 2 forums I went to that had anything to do with any black people at all. The Institute for Social Justice and the African American Chamber of Commerce. Now they asked us a lot of business questions, but they did have a question in there about black businesses, right? and about the disparity study. That and Institute for Social Justice, those are the only places I went to at NJPAC. They asked anything about Black people, anything. We went through this entire, if I didn't raise Black people in this election, it would have never been raised, period. Period. Every time they talked about equity, they was never talking about equity for us. So they talk about health equity, I threw Black women in it. They talking about businesses, I threw Black people into businesses. They talk about home ownership, I got to throw Black people in home ownership. That's your job. That's what you're supposed to be doing. Pushing them so they could see that we alive. We here, we human beings. Dred Scott was overturned. We actually not property anymore, right? So at the end of the day, how you gonna be the governor of the state without a plan for Black people? Nobody demands it. The Negroes that are around you ain't asking for no Black agenda.
Soprano State blues to the fullest.
So
has Congresswoman Sherelle reached out to you yet?
Go ahead. I didn't hear you.
Has Congresswoman Sherelle reached out to you yet?
Yeah. We spoke. Okay. We met. We texted a couple of times. We actually had a good conversation, man. What I'm telling you is what I told her. Like, at the end of the day, like, you need to make sure that you have an agenda centered around Black maternal care, around the wealth gap, around this study that they did, the disparity study. All these things have to be in your platform, as well as other stuff, but this stuff have to be in your platform. Yep. And
we got out of Murphy, like what we're doing around public safety.
Yeah. Right? I told her that.
Walsh did a great piece in terms of, really documenting where we need to hold some folks accountability, right? That, we need some strengthening of Oprah. There's some basic places where she definitely needs to go.
Did the man freeze?
I thought it was he did freeze. Yeah. If he can hear you, tell him to go out and come back in.
Man, you froze. If you can hear us, you probably need to go out and come back in.
Yeah, but he was just hitting. That was an important piece that he was laying out. That whole question of he's going back out and coming back in. Yeah, it's for all of its complexity and all of its frustration and all of the shortcomings, this thing is still winnable if we do everybody does their share properly.
You froze, man.
Yeah,
you
were making some points around Congresswoman Sherelle and what she needs to do.
Yeah, no, that's and I told him that they needed to bring the party together. That you got to bring this party together. You want to win, you got to bring everybody to the table. That's not like emotional discussion. That's facts.
Yeah,
that's not me pushing my social agenda. That's me saying what the truth is. The truth is you got to bring everybody to the table, and they have to feel like they are respected, and it has to be organic. People can't look at it like it's contrived. I don't care if you get every Negro in America to come out and say we endorse him. But if you don't have a solid agenda that's geared towards our community and people believe it, then it's going to be hard for folks to get out there to convince people to do that. And, honestly, it is in our interest that she wins this election. It's in our interest.
Absolutely.
To anything other than that is just not telling the truth. I'm not going to make things up. This guy is terrible. I've been on forums with him and panels with this guy. These people are bad news, man. They don't want to build affordable housing. They're not going to increase your wages. They're not going to support. These people don't even support civilian complaint review boards. They don't support giving money to CVI organizations. They don't even support money going to your public school system. They think you're getting too much money, in fact. right? These people are straight up and down racist. And I don't care what black person comes to you and say you should support these people. They're not telling the truth. They're trying to get personal stuff for themselves the same way the Negroes on the other side get personal stuff from Democrats.
That's
And
right.
that's the problem. We got all of these people hanging around both of these parties who are going to get personal things from these folks at the expense of the collective.
Yeah.
And that's what the problem is, right? And look, and that's the reality. I don't need nothing from none of these people. I don't want nothing from them. I don't want to be the lieutenant governor. I don't want none of that stuff. At the end of the day, if you do something for black people, you're doing something for me anyway. So and that's just the facts. Some of us are so ambitious that we are looking to go up the ladder, at the expense of everybody else, and that's all we're interested in. And we're not interested in nothing else, right? And to me, in this campaign, the person that did me the most harm out here, besides the $40 million that Sean Spiller spent out here that he shouldn't have done, is Fulop. He was out here telling people I was unelectable, that I couldn't win. He was fighting the progressive base, pulling my numbers away because he wanted to win so bad. He was doing anything, putting out crazy stuff. He didn't want to put out the stuff in my mind about the whole anti-Semitic, the Farrakhan thing. That came from him and his camp.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, 100%.
Wow.
100%.
They did that because we were struggling for the progressives. So he was trying to pull progressives away from me because he thought he should win. If he thought he should win, he should just go on his background and spend the $20 million he spent. That should have been enough.
Right.
It wasn't enough.
Mayor, I apologize for being late. I was listening in the background and you were talking about the Republican candidate, and I'm glad that you did have a good conversation with Congresswoman Cheryl, the candidate. I know, living in the Orange, East Orange area, I have already seen Chitterelli signs going up on their Orange Park. And I know where they're sitting at, and very upset about that, because it's people, like you said, that take from our community, but yet they're going to campaign for that, knowing that it's not going to bring any good to our community. But I was also surprised that, and maybe it's just the beginning, but I don't want to be still, because when I see that this is already happening in our community, and then I see who Congresswoman has picked for leadership, and there's nobody yet at the table that represents the Black community. And if you look at the last two presidential elections, it was our community that won those elections. So I think we should have been one of her first priorities, especially with you coming up number 2.
Yeah. Well, they did. They picked one guy who worked for Murphy, and then he was in Biden's thing too. He's a lawyer. He's a good guy, young guy. I don't know what they're going to do with him. He's one of the vice presidents of their campaign, vice chairman of the campaign. I don't know what's going to happen. He would be a good attorney general if they decided to do that. But I told her she needs more diversity in her thing, and I think that she's begun trying to do that. But she needs more diversity, period. And the people that represent her, all up and down the board. These folks need to be challenged by us. And that's the problem. They're used to getting people around them who don't challenge them. They just got their hand out.
Right.
They just got their hand out. And they think they can give us things and that'll keep us quiet, or go around, or what they do is go around us. So if you start challenging them, they try to go around you and get other people and give them things, so they think they can go around you. The problem in this scenario that she's in now, that the Democratic Party, I don't want to put it on her. I want to put it on the party, because that's where it deserves to be, because they chose her, right? I want to put it on the party because what happens is, if they continue to go around people and don't give people respect, the party is going to lose. It is already losing. If they don't see that the party is divided and broken, and they need to stop the nonsense and change the playbook and fix this thing, it's over.
Yeah, and that's a real concern. And before the election, the fight over the integrity of Oprah was ugly.
Yeah,
ugly.
They got to cut it out, man. it's over, you know, and
they got to get good surrogates because everybody can't go in everybody's community. They need some good.
everybody can't go. They think that though. That is the problem. They think that because you are black, that you automatically have access to the black community.
That's right.
You know, and I know that is
Yep.
incorrect.
That's right.
You can't just get any, not today. You can't just
That's
get any black person to roll up on black people and start
Yep.
telling them stuff. It's not going to happen. It ain't gonna happen. It's not going to turn out well. It's not going to turn out well. And so we feel good, like when people go ask us questions, what they do is you feel like empowered. Your proximity to that makes you feel good. So you start pretending you can do stuff that you can't, as opposed to saying, I'm with this collective. We all together. Right? We together over here. Right? So when they start saying you together, they got to treat you as a unit, as a group. Then you get more.
That's right.
You get more. And that's the problem. We want a third of the pie and not the whole pie. We rather have small things, individual things, than the whole state. We're gonna have the whole entire state. And people they left that on the table. They walked away from that out of fear, right? And no imagination, and laziness. And laziness. I'm so glad that Harriet Tubman didn't think like these people think today.
Yeah, man.
You ain't lying.
Yeah.
That she escaped and came back and got some more folks.
And she kept that pistol.
That's right.
The Negroes tell no tales.
That's right. That's exactly right, brother. That's like, I'm so glad that these Negroes wasn't in charge, because if they were, we'd be in bad shape, worse than we already in.
Our
Yeah,
backs
man.
would be hurting, and our
I tell you one thing, man. I'm so happy, man, to hear what you just said, and I know somebody just texted me a minute ago, said, you know, we need to clip that piece, what you just said, that you're not interested in the lieutenant governor's job, man, because you know we were having a conversation up at Rocks, man, on Saturday. You know, all of us, man, and you know, we were just saying, yo, man, we don't want nobody to play you out. You know,
Nobody gonna play me out, brother. I
don't need that, man.
I don't need it. I don't want it. I told them in their face, that's not my brand.
Yeah. Go ahead, man.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
that was your first video when I remember you came out. We was like, yeah, we don't. Yeah, he's like, look, I'm not running for lieutenant governor. I don't want to have the conversation.
I don't want it. They trying to give it to you though. I don't want it. Like, and that's people. I mean, people close, let me tell you something, man. People close to us, very close to us,
yes,
who are in activist circles, call me and ask me to be the lieutenant governor.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
I can't. I cannot, because what it'll do is castrate you.
Yeah. 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 Rock played it out Saturday, brother.
I like being a free person.
Yeah.
You know, I get to go where I want to go, say what I want to say. I went every place I went to Piscataway and supported Stacey Berger, longtime friend of mine, longtime white colleague activist. They wanted me, they called me 1,000 times for me not to go down there. They called me so much that I went down there twice. You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, I like to be able to do that. You know what I mean? To make decisions that I think is going to benefit who I am and what I believe, and not have to think about, you know, if I should do this, if I should do that, are they going to take this, if they're going to do that. I mean, when you put your livelihood in these people's hands, you got children, you got things, you're a grown person, you got things to think about, which is how they got these people, you know, their arms twisted. Okay. Some of these people are careerists, so they've been running for office and they know they can't win because they won with them and they don't think they can win without them. So they're not going to stray away from them. That's really what it is, because it's hard to raise your own money. That's why I don't be so extra angry at people, because I know it's hard to raise money. I know it's hard to build an organization, because the people who say they're going to go out there and knock doors, which you don't usually show up. So it's hard, right? And when you got a built-in organization and you got other people raising money for you, I mean, people take that, right? The problem with that is the minute you cross them, they go.
Yeah.
The minute you have a different idea, a different opinion, it's over with.
It's nice
That's
to
why I
be
always do.
it's nice to
Yeah,
be independent and run your own organization so you can do your own thing. So
that's right. Raise your
man,
own money.
that's
I tell
right.
all these people that. Raise your own money, build your own organization, do what you need to do, and then you go meet with people
And
on
do the
equal
work while
footing.
you're there. Do the work. Don't wait till every 4 years. Do the work every day. That's the important. People remember that.
That's it. You got to do it. And I know it's hard. 'Cause it's hard to lose. Like people don't like losing, but look, losing is a part of life, is a part of winning. Like, at the end of the day, but if you don't get in the ring, you won't ever win. You never gonna find out if you can win if you don't get in the fight. You gotta
Man,
start swinging, and that's it. You just gotta start swinging. Malcolm said we too busy singing. That's why we can't swing.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Mayor, I've been looking at our numbers in Essex County probably since 2008, and it's 30, but this time it was 18%. How do we galvanize? I mean, this is probably one of the simple, you can go cast your ballot, but what do we need to do different to get numbers like when President Obama ran? I know it's keeping people
Yeah.
invigorated, but they just, I remember
It's too
Jesse
many.
said from the outhouse to the White House, you got to vote.
Yeah. It's too many, and we still beat them by 6,000 votes. By the way,
Mm-hmm.
it's too many elections, and people get election
Right.
fatigue, and they don't know what the primary is, and this is, and that is. I still see people on the street who tell me they voting for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
I went to my son's graduation. We went to Star Tavern afterwards. I come out of Star Tavern, and there's people out there. Oh, we got you. We gonna vote for you. We got you. You're gonna be the governor. Race over with.
Yeah. That's because we have nonpartisan and orange. Yeah.
Yeah, it's over with. It's over with. Yeah, they don't. People don't know. They keep these things quiet. They don't know. It's too many elections, and the fact is, we have to get out in these communities and organize people and register them to vote and get information out to them. We depending on the people who are supposed to be doing that ain't doing it. The party not doing it, right? It's just not happening. The Democratic Party is not doing that. So they have no organizers in that party. It's all careerists looking for opportunity and not trying to organize the community. And that's the difference.
And one of the things that everybody was surprised that even the sample ballot, we have a good county clerk and he mails them out, but that's an optional thing to do.
I didn't get mine, and neither did my daughter.
You never got yours, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that,
which disallows you to do early voting, because we always talk on that since that came out.
And it has the bars and good, yeah.
All due respect. I appreciate where you're going, though, Donna. Go ahead, finish your point.
No, I was just saying that people don't realize that's an optional, if you didn't have a Chris Durgan or somebody there, they may not do it. It may be strategic not to do it. And some municipalities may not do it. And they don't do it. Or if it's a municipal, it's an optional for the clerk of whoever's running that election to mail out those sample ballots. And I think that might be a excellent lesson in civics, that if we did a referendum question, that it needs to be mandatory because it's paid for with tax dollars.
I rock with you on that.
Yeah. They dropping people off the roads too. They done dropped about 20,000 people off the roads. I think more than that, actually.
Yeah. And that was a big issue on election day. Yeah. Because people were not, I know I had them in the system that you use, because I worked as your challenger. So I had them in your system, but they weren't in the actual election system. So yeah, that was a big deal that day.
But you know what though, man? I think, man, I'm so proud, man, that you understand, right, your network. You understand how we feel. And for you to speak the way you speaking right now, man, makes all of us feel good about, the conversations we all were having Saturday, because none of us saw you like that, man, And
the
you
good
know,
thing, yeah, that's the good thing is I don't see myself like that.
yeah, that's real talk, man. You know what I'm
I mean,
saying? That's real talk.
yeah, I mean, look, uh, some people would do that. It's tempting. You feel like you lost, and you get an opportunity to feel like you won something, right? And a lot of people who are coming to me telling me this are just also afraid that if she doesn't do anything of that caliber, that the Democrats are going to lose to Chitterelli.
Absolutely.
And that's the spirit
Yeah.
that people that I know came to me with, right?
Right.
They're not coming to me saying, "Oh, I need you to do this because it's a good thing, it's a good look, it's a good political look, and for political ambition." They're saying, "Listen, we are in a dangerous period. This guy Trump has done all kinds of things, and he's coming for us. And if this woman loses, New Jersey becomes vulnerable." So what they're really saying, in essence, is that we need you to make sure Chitterelli doesn't win. And if she doesn't do anything of that caliber, Black people are not going to be excited about her.
I'm gonna tell you,
it almost needs to be like how Bernie Sanders shifted the presidential election. I think what you have done so far has shifted New Jersey's Democrats, and I think we need to keep pushing the progressive agenda that you brought to the table, because it needs to be a shift. And that's why, as I started, that there needs to be surrogates. And I know, Ed, that was one of the things that you were fighting for with the presidential election, that Mayor Baraka needed to be a surrogate. You have to be, you don't have to be lieutenant governor, but you definitely have to be a surrogate.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen, because I'm telling you that, I mean, when I was watching all the games, they were playing with the man. I didn't really say anything publicly. I just kind of kept it to myself because I didn't want to hurt him. But I got to tell you, man, it was like, yo, I'm not going to vote for these cats, man. I'm not going to vote for none of these suckers. And from my perspective, I'm waiting for my brother. And what he just said, I know makes all of us feel good, because, like Rock said, that was not what we all signed up for, right? Because we see our mayor as our leader, right? And he ain't no lieutenant governor. That's period. She don't have the mayor's pedigree. That's true. We're not gonna knock her. The mayor's correct about, we don't want Chitterelli to win, but we also don't want to go and sit down at the table and have us negotiate to support her, and our people don't get looked out for. I'm talking about the community, right?
Right.
It's got to be looked out for. She's got to have some of those things that the mayor just put forth, right? That's part of her plan. That's part of her policy. That's part of her thinking. If it's not, come on, man, that's not who we are. That's just not who we are. And the mayor's right. We gotta go hard. We gotta go hard. I mean, you hear what Boyer is saying every time he come up here, right? He's the strongest Black preacher talking like that, right? And from my perspective, at the end of the day, we gotta ride with our man. There's no doubt about it. But we also are not going, we're not going to tell the man some bullshit. We're going to tell him straight out, yo, here's what we believe, man. I think that when you go sit down with these people, man, be clear that your people ride with you, but we ain't gonna ride with them just for some bullshit. We just not gonna do it.
Well, we're confident what message he's going to say, because we've known how he's been sending his messages all along. But what I will say is that from what I've seen, and even from the last election, how he Chitterelli, he was in our community. I know he was in Irvington Park, in Orange Park. He's there, and I'm saying the day after the primary, his signs was up in East Orange. He is not losing any, and this is not a time for the breeze. She has to get busy, and that's why I'm saying, when I looked at that article, who she selected, the senator and everything like that.
What article did you look at, Daddy, so we can put it up?
I sent it, and it was just her announcement who the chair and the vice chair was for the campaign going forward, and it was the senator. And I forgot the second name, but I sent it out, and I'll talk about it later. But I think that And the conversation is ongoing, but it's I'm telling you, he's off and running. He's been campaigning in the East Orange community. He knows
Oh
about
yeah,
the black vote, and we
yeah,
have to get serious. And Governor Murphy campaigned. He started out with his nonprofit. He was campaigning like 2.5 years before the election.
yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah,
And you were one of the first to raise up support for him.
That's right.
yeah.
Let me say this. This is just building on, and we just lost him. I hope he reconnects. Right.
Mhm.
The first time I got a taste of her wasn't a bad taste. Remember Sue Altman from New Jersey working family, who
Mhm.
used to drive the folks down in South Jersey crazy, real radical Sue, getting arrested, bum rushing, legislative meeting. Love crazy Sue, right? And then ran against Tom Kaine and had him peeing in his pants, right?
Mhm.
And Roe v. Wade got overturned. Sue organized a number of united rallies against the right wing. The one she did one in South Orange, and this is the first time that Mickey Sherrill showed up.
Mhm.
She had some energy, she had some spark. Folks had
Mhm.
not really heard her before. Now
Mhm.
we need her if she's going to show up. She can't just show up in South Orange like she did for Sue Altman. She got to come.
Yeah.
If Chitterelli is already out here in Irving,
Yes.
in Norga,
I can remember the last governor election.
He going to black churches already.
Yes.
It's all right. She got to come into our community.
Yeah.
Name. And at
Right,
that
Mayor
point,
Don.
she sounded like somebody who was trying to be a part of the progressive stream, push it to left. Mayor, I'm talking about when Sue Altman did that rally in South Orange after Roe v. Wade was overturned. That's the first time a lot of us got a chance to look at Mickey Sherrill. And she
Right.
showed up there with a little bit of spunk, right?
Right.
We're going to show up throughout the state in all of our respective communities the same way, bringing our interests with her.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
and remember, and if you got to reflect on the campaign, if you remember, Corzine was running for re-election. President Obama just got elected. President Obama came in that time, November, January, sworn in 3 times before the primary. So that's between January and June. He was here 3 times because he wanted to, of course, get the New Jersey governor and the Virginia governor. But you have to, and that's when Christie won. You have to get out here and campaign. And I'm telling you, I was very surprised last time Fiorelli ran. And when I see him in locations and his ability to connect. So it's nothing to be taken for granted. It's time to
personality. He does.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you
I
something.
gotta get out of here, y'all.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
running.
Hey, man,
Well, you got to send us some private word and also let us know if there's anything we need to know about Delaney and all if you haven't said it because I can't leave.
Yeah, no, we still in court with them people. But go ahead.
Okay.
But man, before you pull out, man, I just want to say, man, we want to thank definitely the First Lady, man, for the way she showed up, out there in the campaign with you, man. She was rocking that, brother. You know what I mean? With getting the sisters, on board. Because I came to one of those things with the pack, man.
It came out.
And that was real strong, brother.
Yeah.
Just
Roundtree get some love in that too. Absolutely.
Yep, Roundtree, man. She was rolling with you real. And then our brother Mayor Warren, man. I gotta say he's one of the only
he went against the machine.
Out, man. So
Mayor Warren by way of Jason Grove.
How about
Jason
that?
Grove represented hard.
Some homeboys.
That's real though. Because listen, I don't take it lightly, and I'm gonna end on that because it was a serious atmosphere. They were putting heavy pressure on all these cats. Mm-hmm. They was putting heavy pressure on these guys, man. All these elected officials, these people around, especially in Essex County. They wanted to win Essex County. It didn't help. They didn't win it. They wanted to win it. They needed to win Essex County, not for the governor's race, but for themselves.
Send you a message, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And now they look weak.
Yep.
And now they look weak, and everybody is going to start coming at these guys, and they ought to.
That's right. That's right.
And they ought to. So I know they was putting pressure on people, and I know they was putting pressure on him when he did it, telling him, "Oh, it's too early. What are you doing this now for? You shouldn't be endorsing people." Da, 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 da. He might not even stay in the race. They're just putting pressure on him. Like, "Oh, you can't do this." Our friends.
Yeah, that
Putting
was the
pressure on him.
opposite message. There was no reason for them to endorse. They could have
Right,
waited until after the primary.
right.
They could
But
have let the people speak.
yep, yep. And they did. And at the end of the day, man, we did well. But I'm gonna tell you this: if black people was together across this state, we would have won this thing, hands
Yeah.
down. Reverend
Yeah.
Boyer was absolutely correct.
Yeah.
The numbers bore it out.
Why did we not have a statewide Souls to the Polls campaign? Come on.
So I know Browntree was trying to organize it, but some of these Negroes, look, it was preachers, black preachers in our county that was going with Fuller, organizing events in West Orange and Maplewood. For them, I'm telling you, it was preachers who wanted the endorsement and couldn't come out because they was with the party, right? There's people in the South, preachers in the South who was with Sweeney, or who was with Fuller. I mean, it's serious, man. Serious. But
Well, right, man. We got to go.
Well, hopefully, what's that? After Lincoln got elected, he went back and somehow everybody that ran against him was utilized. So I can't think of the name of the book now, but the phone calls are being made. So hopefully by your July meeting, we'll have a better plan in place and you shift the agenda further and we'll be on the right road.
Yeah.
If you got to come in before July, please do.
Yeah, I will.
Right,
all right, y'all.
Hey,
take care, man.
You, brother. Peace,
We're
man.
proud of you, man. We're proud of you for real. You know that.
Thank you.
All right. Did we
All right.
He froze. Can y'all hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I hear you, man.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, he's probably just hitting the button. Hey there.
Hey y'all, how are you?
Attorney Norton.
What's going on?
Yes, all is going on. What's going on with y'all? I hope did everyone enjoy Zaid, Ed, did you guys enjoy your Father's Day?
Yeah.
Good.
I was doing Father's Day on.
Did y'all sign up for swimming lessons yet?
Ed.
Hi, Miss Dira.
Yes. I also have Miss Lyndsay. Do you guys see her
yes.
room? Okay.
All right, yeah, bring her in.
Okay, so good evening all. I know we just had the mayor on, and so sending our love to him and the first lady of Newark. He certainly ran an amazing campaign, and him and Mitty, they definitely the chief of staff. It's still too soon, still too early, but that was historic. What they were able to accomplish. And so moving on to the next, we have we're bringing on Lyndsay. I know she's like still in the waiting room, and so she'll be.
She's right there. She's here.
Okay. Do you guys?
No, I don't see Lyndsay.
We got you.
We got to bring her up front. We got to bring out a.
Yeah, I don't see
right there. She's right there.
We have Indira here, but not Lyndsay.
Yeah, we have Indira, but we don't have Lyndsay.
Oh, so okay.
Okay, there we go.
Lyndsay. Yeah.
I first went, Zaid, when you're like, I'm like, is it me? Do I not see something? Am I like? And so, all right, good. We have everyone.
I was glad to see Indira.
Much better. I'm here. I know Indira's a special one. We're here for Indira.
Yes, and so we have Lyndsay and we have Indira from Imagine Newark. We've had Imagine Newark on a few years ago when I was first on All Politics Are Local. And so we have them back because they have some very, very exciting news, which is a little old now, but before Imagine Newark was operating at different locations here in Newark. But within the last few months, they have opened up a home base right here in the city of Newark. And so welcome, Lyndsay. Welcome, Indira. We're happy to have you on this evening on All Politics Are Local. And so I don't want to say like what exactly Imagine is because I don't want to be corrected. So I'm just going to go ahead and let y'all just take the floor, please. So again,
Asia, let me add this.
Yes.
Because, they have a certain thing that they bring to what we do in Newark. Newark has been struggling to become a trauma-informed city. Right? And the conversation that we wanted to have with Imagine a few weeks ago was when they were breaking ground with opening up in Newark. Right? Yes. I'm glad you made the connect and finally brought them in.
Yes.
Right? We'll get a golden cookie for that, daughter. All right?
Yes. Okay? Yes. Not a golden cookie. Right? Give me a golden ticket. I don't want the cookie. I want the ticket.
You're dealing with a working class, warrior. That's all I got, baby. All right. Okay.
Yes. And so, Lyndsay, please tell us. Yeah. Just remind our listeners what Imagine is, and then again, share your exciting news.
Beautiful. I feel so lucky to be with you all. This is really important for me. On the day that we celebrated the ribbon cutting at Imagine, I realized that I've been in the city of Newark for 20 years. And my first year in the city of Newark, my father was diagnosed with stage 4 brain cancer. And I was a teacher at Martin Luther King Jr. Elementary School at the time. And he died that year. And it was my first real touch with grief and loss. And the kids and families and teacher and administration was just so good to me during that time. My dad actually sat in the back of my classroom while I was teaching those first few months as a first-year teacher. So when he died, it was really traumatic for me. But the city of Newark took such good care of me that I knew I was never leaving. And to now on the 20th anniversary, God, I cannot believe it's been 20 years, but to open a space for grief in the city of Newark. So Imagine Newark is a 100% free peer-to-peer grief support center for children as young as 3 years old to 103. And we always say it's not therapy that we do. We build community. We create spaces for people who are grieving to share their story honestly and openly with others who have been there, who can walk through their shoes. And we say the only cure for grief is to be allowed to grieve. And Imagine is a space for families to do just that. So we've got so much more that we do, but down to our core, we know the story of grief. We've experienced it, and we create safe spaces for people to share those stories with one another.
That's amazing. Yes, that's amazing. And so maybe Indira, please tell the now of Imagine. And so been here for so many years. And so where are we now with Imagine?
Oh, well, Imagine now. So we have 3 different initiatives now. So real big, as you guys know, we just broke ground. We are located at 570 Broad Street on a 4th floor, the Chase building.
Wait, pause. So you said, so we know we just broke ground. Congratulations. That is amazing. Your own facility for family, for children, a center.
And a great location. That's a great location.
So that's amazing.
Yeah, I have to, because we fought hard, right? And so many partnerships as a nonprofit to lease a space that is 4,000 square feet. So families each have dedicated rooms. We have a littles room, a middles room, a teenage room. We have an adult support group space. We have a Spanish speaking program from Grupo Rosado, young adults, and then adults who've experienced the death of a child. And I just want to shout out partners who have created space for us before. We originally were located inside Beth Israel Hospital in their wellness center. And then during COVID, we had to go virtual. We came back, and the Boys and Girls Club was willing to share space with us, but that's not so conducive to grief when you're in a classroom or you're in a gymnasium. It doesn't really feel like the setting that you want to share your story and bare your soul. And Life Academy on Burgaw Avenue took us, and we were home there for about 4 months. And so our families have really been through the moves from location to location. And so to find the space at 570 Broad Street, it's handicap accessible. There's parking in the back. It's close to public transportation. And we really have the safety for people to be in community with each other. So thank you, Asia, for acknowledging the fight that it's been.
So that also says that you guys must be good neighbors, that everybody's inviting you. You've never been homeless. That's beautiful.
That's a beautiful thing.
That's lucky.
Yeah. And so we also just completed our program year for this program year, but we do have our waiting list open, which means that we are still taking our orientations and things like that for families who's interested in joining our program for September when we're starting. And we started, Lyndsay would be so proud if I didn't mention this, is that we started with one night of support, and now we're at 2 nights of support for our Newark Centers. So that's really, really huge to grow into 2 nights of support within one program year. And so we'll be starting off next program year with 2 nights of support. And so that's where we are now for our center. But we also have 2 other different initiatives. So we have what we call Go to the Grieving, where we actually are going to do after school grief groups, as well as camp grief groups with our partner, Boys and Girls Club. And so we're getting ready to train some of our Newark residents to be Newark facilitators, to actually go out into camps, into schools, to be able to support our kiddos there. And then we'll transition them to the center throughout their time of getting their school groups and after school groups.
So your work doesn't stop. I'm sorry, go ahead. I was gonna say your work doesn't stop in the summer. You just do it differently.
I just do it differently. Yeah. Work doesn't stop in the summer. We just now, for the summer, for example, we'll be in the community. So we'll be at the Boys and Girls Club camp, and we'll be in the community as well as for the summer. What I'll also be doing is training a lot of our partnership schools. So their mental health professionals, as well as their leadership teams. So we have like KIP, we have Uncommon, we have Gateway, and we have Newark Public Schools. And so they'll also, in the fall, be turnkeying our in-school grief group to their kiddos in their school. And they'll still stay connected with me to then once again transition to the center when they're ready.
Yeah, and so Zaid, you had mentioned before of Newark becoming a trauma-informed city, and Donna, when you explained how you guys never been homeless, and so congratulations, you guys have never been homeless, but that just speaks to the need, like the need that we have here in Newark to have that support system, and you guys are providing it at no cost. Which is like that much more important, but there's still barriers because it's like the perception of counseling or therapy within our community, like we're still trying to just undo those perceptions, but the need is there. And it's beautiful that not only do you guys exist, but there are partnerships that acknowledge that and that are trying to create more spaces, and that you guys have the capacity or building the capacity to do such things. And so I just wonder, you had mentioned that you guys are beginning to train Newark residents to be these not peer, but these counselors. And so what does that actually mean to train, right? Like, do you need to have like certain backgrounds? Do you have to have certain, like, do you need to be a
credentials? Yeah. It's such a good question, because, you know, Zaid, you said it, like, we're aiming for a trauma-informed city. And we always say that, like, with every trauma, there is grief. And you can have grief without trauma, right? We lose a loved one who lived a long life and we still grieve that person. And so, you know, we're aiming for both trauma-informed, but also grief-informed. And so Indira was talking about our Grief-Informed Schools initiative, which is the idea that we want to train educators, administrators to know what the signs are of grief, to understand the types of things someone could be grieving. Mm-hmm. And so we always say that, like, grief comes with any loss. It is not just a loss due to death. You can grieve a move, you can grieve immigration, you can grieve incarceration, you can grieve divorce, you can grieve homelessness, you can grieve loss of a job, loss of a friendship. Yeah. I mean, grief comes in all forms, and you know, it can be much more pronounced when it's due to death because the finality of it, but just helping everybody understand the ways that grief manifests itself, that it doesn't always mean that a child's going to be able to articulate their experience. That anger in the classroom or that lack of academic focus could be grief. Grief is not just sadness. And so our Grief-Informed School is about sharing that education and that knowledge with everyone, so that we're accurately providing supports and making sure that children who are going through grief and that their families know the resources that exist to them. So that's a huge component of what we do, because we know that not every child or family is going to want to come to our center, but they do still need support. And so the avenue that they get it could be within their schools. If they have a trusting relationship with a social worker in the school, if the social worker has the capacity, that's a whole other thing. If they actually have the ability to run a grief group, they're so pressed for time, which is why we know that our center matters. And the beauty of our center is that a family can come for support together. So children can see their caregivers and their adults getting support too, which is that kind of generational culture shift. We know we don't air our dirty laundry and we don't talk about things, but some things we really do need to talk about. The loss of a parent. The amount of stories that we hear on a daily basis, but it breeds trust amongst families, amongst our kids, to feel like they're not the only one who's grieving, that the adults in their lives are also sad about a loss, or that they have feelings that they might need to discuss. And it's not therapy. It's just being with people who understand your plight. So Asia, I'm sorry, I know that's not the exact answer. I think Indira can tell you more about what we're doing for community facilitators, but it's why our grief-informed schools, they're the first line of defense. They meet our kids. We are building relationships with funeral homes so that funeral homes are telling families, did you know there's a place called Imagine? We always say 6 magic words, have you ever heard of Imagine?
No, I love
that.
Yeah, and it's about building trust, right? So going what Asia said about our community, right? Especially us, right? We do not necessarily believe in therapy. We believe in our families being able to provide us, because it's so many times that we have been disregarded for so many of our things, from mental to health, right? And so I think part of that is showing the community through our different ways, whether it's schools, whether it's an after school program, or, if I'm tabling somewhere, it's hey, look at me, right? We are really here to support, and look at how you could bring your family, and the whole family gets the service. And so what I always tell them is listen, this is not therapy. This is not where a facilitator is going to tell you, hey, you should go do this, but it is very therapeutic, because what you're doing is building that community, and you're building that support that you may need when you're grieving. And also us really taking away, especially within our community, of to be resilient means I got over this grief really fast, right? And we all know you don't get over grief. Grief is love.
Amen.
What? Right? You're going to grieve. No matter, you thought you was going to have an okay day, and that song comes on and we're crying in the car. And so that's the really the thing of being hey, we still need each other. You still right? We need each other. When that time slows down, everybody goes home, right? That homegoing is over. That funeral is over. Then what? And that's Imagine is here. And so really for the community to know that we are here. And it's not therapy, but it is very therapeutic. So that's something there. And then Asia, to go to answer your question, for the community facilitators. So what I do ask is that you do have some experience with kids, because we are going into schools. We have to continue to build that partnership with our schools and our after school programs. And so I do ask that you have some type of experience with kiddos. And then you get a 3-day training from myself, as well as my coworker, Baraka. And we do 3 days, full 8 hours each day. And we teach you all about grief, as well as what it means to actually facilitate in the Imagine way. Because a lot of people look at facilitating in a way of I'm going to guide them and do this. And it's no, you're going to sit back and you're going to make sure that the group is safe, and you're going to hear them out and be that companion with them, and listen and let them cry and let those feelings out, because we do believe that you can have all the feelings that you want to have, and those things are okay.
Amen. I love that. And so
one of the things that I know, I like that you're partnered with the funeral homes, because sometimes they are the first line that sometimes to connect. The first time I seen it was in Cotton, up in Orange. Just next door was a place called Echo. But in terms of, I remember Deputy Mayor Keisha Uri, when she did her first trauma, and how opening that was. And I can't even imagine what happened after COVID for you guys, and that amount of grief all at one time, because I know it was a time for me that was transformative, because I had coma, and while I was in the hospital, lost my mom. And one thing I'm thankful for is that I had the years between, because I'm the baby of the family, and I lost my father in high school, and then my mother in my 50s. So it probably, I needed those 32 years apart, because it was so hard. And I
Yes.
think my mom's out in 2020, and it took me like 5 years to say, hey, this is the first year I'm standing, because everything
Yes.
around me reminds me. So grief is to hear, we're not rushed. It's like the funeral, the wake, have your meal, get back to work, like let's, and sometimes you're walking through it and you're falling apart. So what you're
Yes.
doing, I know there's one other organization that I hope you guys can sometimes, it is Winona's House in Newark. I don't know if you know of it, but with you two organizations in Newark, I think you would have everything. It would almost be like a hug around Newark.
Yes.
So they're right on Washington, I believe. And for
Yes.
those children who have been traumatized through like sexual abuse and everything, they're there for that. And then you're there for grief. But what I hear, especially how, because that's the first, when you described your facility, you got this room, that room, because at that makes everything where you can sit down and be comfortable and talk about it. So I applaud you and taking, the hardest thing and just bringing the best thing out of it. So please, I mean,
Thank you,
that
Donna.
Newark will always, always be so much better for this.
Thank you, Donna.
And our
Yeah,
whole community, because it's just not for Newark, because I'm sure if I came knocking on the door like, hey, I need you, you would everywhere.
Yeah.
well, Newark first and foremost. We're like, you're a Newark resident, but you're talking about cumulative grief, right? We always say that, like, you really, when you're experiencing one death, you should get a break, but people don't. They have one and then another and another. And so the average family stays with Imagine almost 3 years.
Yeah.
Right? Like 3 years of bi-weekly support. We serve dinner when they come. So families, it's one less thing for you to worry about. Like so I lost my dad when I was 21 and I lost my husband when I was 34. And losing my dad, I couldn't talk about it for 5 years. Like the words would get choked in my throat, right? And I'm one of 4 children. We all handled it totally differently. I had a 16-year-old brother who it didn't hit him till college. I had a brother who was just back from Iraq. It has been really hard on all 4 of us. But then to lose my husband, like I thought I knew how to handle it. I didn't realize how much community support I needed. And I didn't realize how much I needed for how long I needed it, right? Like the first year, you're just getting your feet under you. You're taking care of the paperwork. You're planning funerals. You're just getting through the day. The second year, people say, is even harder because it's all sinking in. Like you realize there's no end. It's not going to get better. Like it's just the second year, people are like, I can't believe this is my reality, right? Like, and then the third year, the beauty of the third year, I think, in our model is that you maybe get to offer some hope and wisdom to other people. Like the beauty of our peer-to-peer support groups is that you might be in a group with someone who just experienced a loss and someone who's 2 years out. Mm-hmm. And the thing I loved about that was you just had people who had walked your shoes before where you could ask questions. What are you doing? How did you handle Father's Day what did you do on the 1-year anniversary? My kids are 3 years out and they're still crying about their dad. Is that normal? Like it gives space for you to bounce ideas off of other people, also to see your own progress. Like, oh, someone comes in and wow, I'm not there anymore. It still hurts really badly, but God about that, And I love our model. I love it because you also, for children, it's one of the only times that they're in a room with 25 other children who have also experienced a death.
Yeah.
Like they're not the only kid. Yeah. Everywhere they go, they're the kid whose dad died or the kid whose brother died. When they come to Imagine, everybody had that.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. I wonder, have you ever received pushback? So whether it be like from families, from children who you're trying to offer support, or they were recommended, they reached out and they're just like, no, I don't need this. I'm fine. And I guess to speak to people who feel as though that it's not necessary, like, one, how do you bring them in? And then 2, and this is partially what you might tell them, but why is it important, right? And so like we're talking about all the services, we're talking about the longevity of it, but like why is this necessary? Why is the work of Imagine, why is trauma-informed care, why is this important?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Indira, do you want to do the pushback question? Because I'm like, Indira does the support calls, the orientation.
So I could just tell you from experience, and then I could get to the why. So we do get a lot of, I get a lot of support calls to where one, they just made the support call. And sometimes they're really shocked that I answer. I call them right back and say, hey, you know, tell them who we are, and they come in. Or sometimes they don't come in and I have to have conversations. And so when I'm having conversations with them, I'm really just meeting them where they are. Just, hey, tell me, you know, what made you make the phone call? Tell me what made you want to have this conversation with me. And so I'm just following them along till I get them into the orientation for the center. So we do an orientation in a center to where we talk about the importance of having support, joining the grief group, what it means to join a peer grief group. Because once again, I do have to, right, break down those barriers of is someone going to tell me what to do and how to handle it this way, right? And so I have to really talk to them where they are and bring them out of that. And part of that is partly giving them some education about why it's important for them to receive the support and talk about what it means to really feel healthy, or what resilience really means after death, right? One of the things that we talk about all the time is like, and you hear this in our community all the time, or their kids are so resilient, or we're so resilient, which we are, right? But when someone dies and you're experiencing that grief, the one thing we all recognize is that you change. Something in you has changed. Right. And so I speak to them a lot about what has changed in you. What have you noticed? And let's talk about what it means to be resilient. Being resilient means that you are moving forward as your new self, and whatever that may look like, right? And also means there's no time on this. And so I think a lot of times when I'm breaking those things down, even explain it to them why Imagine we use the words dead, deaf, died, and so concrete, especially for children, because if you guys notice, children use the concrete language. And so we try to provide them with those different educations. Once I provide them with those different educations, still meeting them where they are, then they do become to be more open. Or they'll politely say, you know what, Indira, it was great meeting with you. I love this center. But a lot of times they do come back. And so I remember when that first happened to me, I was really concerned and said, oh my God, like, I'm not sure. And within 3 months, because I did keep in contact with that family, they were able to come back. And so I just would just keep in contact, hey, because we're free. And once you do the orientation, you can join at any time that you would like. So I'm just keeping in contact just to let them know, one, you're on my mind, and two, the door is always open for you to walk through it when you're ready, and we're here. And I think that helps bring them along a lot.
Yeah, it's like a new concept to go to grief support. And so people need to hear about it like 6, 8 times before they're walking through our doors. Like, what are you talking about? A grief center? I'm not going there. And so we offer a lot of community-based workshops, days where the centers are just open so that you can bring a less inclined family just to come check out what Imagine is, go see the center, visit the space. And it helps a lot when people know about Imagine, because then people can vouch for it, which is why all the work in the community matters so much. You know, people trust people, they don't trust organizations. And so it's like, well, Miss J said, Indira goes by Miss J many times. We've both been in schools for years, and it's like, Miss J said that place is cool, right? You know, Asia said it. Like, that's how I'll end up getting families to walk through our doors. But the other thing is, like, when families have gone through very severe trauma, they might opt for one-on-one therapy first.
Yes.
We've seen that a lot, and that's okay.
Yes.
We can't be everything for everyone. Sometimes someone's trauma and grief is so big that the idea of being in a peer-to-peer support group would be overly igniting for them. It would be activating for them. They can't hear other people's stories right now. And then we would recommend that you do one-on-one therapy. And so Imagine has a list of grief-informed therapy providers that we would then recommend them to. And so in a lot of ways, we're kind of a one-stop shop. Like, if it's not us, we're going to get you hooked up with the right people, because we can't be everything for everybody. But when and if this is right for you, we're going to be there with you throughout the entire time.
That speaks to the functionality of what we call an ecosystem, right? Let me say a couple things. One, I'm glad you have the relationship with the school system. for all the work. And my encounter with Imagine is that I can't remember who it was from your team, but there was, I work for Equal Justice USA. We're best known for Trauma to Trust, right?
You worked with us. We worked with University Hospital together.
Okay, right? Several things. All the good work we have done in Newark, building up this community-based violence intervention ecosystem. There are two relationships that need serious work, and you're on one. The hardest one, of course, is with law enforcement, because law enforcement is just, there's a tunnel vision about law enforcement culture that is a whole nother conversation that I ain't gonna burden y'all with, because it'll give all of us headaches, right? The other is the school system is a natural partner for this work, but the relationship is nowhere near where it should be with all of the efforts and intentionality that we have in the space. So just as an observation, I'm glad that y'all are there. They're in a well-received space, and I'm hoping it's something that we can build on. I want you to tell a little more, just in a practical term, that because there's something that you may be able to do in terms of capacity, may not be able to do. We have some other needs. We have a lot of folks who come to this work who are not skilled, right? Who just come with their hearts. Oh, our kids need help. I want to mentor kids, right? And just have these great good intentions and volunteer, but are clueless as what it means to actually work in a trauma-informed ecosystem where, we actually direct people with certain skill sets, certain resources to certain situations, and we help each other out, and we help fill in those blanks even when we can't provide the service ourselves, like you just described. But two things. This ecosystem needs a floor, a place, a foundational place for persons interested in doing this kind of work to go to begin the process of becoming trauma-informed, begin the process of becoming grief-informed, begin the process of really understanding this in a formal sense, right? In a basic sense, to become a good resource. We want all our resources to be good resources. And second, quiet as it's kept, we do not have enough in the way of grief groups or support groups for grieving mothers. And that showed up recently with one of our best workers, who's also a social worker, but who was hit with an enormous crisis just within the last year. And it revealed to us that, this is a place that should be more solid in our work. So just in terms of your capacity, what would you say to that in terms of what you do, what you can do, and other partners you may want to lift up?
So when you say for grieving mothers, we do actually have a group, the Go Group. And so right now for our center, it is for experience of an actual death of a person. And so with that, we actually do offer a group for moms, what we call a Go Group, which are mothers or fathers, because I do have males as well,
yes,
who has experienced the death of a child. And so I do have that group. They're really connected. One of the things that I always say is that as great it is that I get to see all of them and I am connected with all of them, it's also really sad that that is one of my groups that are one of the PAC groups. I have at least 12 people there on a night of support. And so they do offer that, I do offer that. And I have that age range right now from the youngest possibly being 30 and the oldest being 84, because like we said, we believe grief is love, and that's not something that you're ever going to get over. So we do honor that. So we do have that. And then to be trained to be grief informed. So those are part of our trainings. So that's why each training that we do is 3 full days with the expectation that you actually do become to be grief informed, and you also get supervision. So for the schools and for some of our partnership organizations or companies, they receive supervision from myself to ensure that they are like really processing when they're doing those grief groups and things like that, to keep staying grief informed, to become more self-aware as they're going through the process of holding the groups. And as well as our facilitators at the center, they receive pre and post. And our facilitators, they also get what we call continuous education credits. And to be a facilitator at Newark, you also have to do 3 full days as well. So we have 2 different type of trainings. We have our trainings that's for schools that kind of center around how do you lead a grief group in trauma-informed and grief-informed school. And then we have our training that to become an actual facilitator and a full-on training on what that means to become to be an Imagine facilitator. But they all do receive pre and post to continue their own self-awareness and education to stay, trauma-informed and grief-informed.
Yeah, like you mentioned the idea of there's so many good-hearted people that show up and want to volunteer. And like, you're right. Some of them shouldn't, we're like, that is so lovely. We try to find a place for everybody, like maybe you start as a Imagine volunteer who does cleanup and setup every night. That might be the first place for you if you're interested in being of service in it. Maybe you're going to table for Imagine, like get out there, spread the word of grief. But to be a facilitator with us, we go through 3 full days of training. And then at the end of the training, we decide, like, should you facilitate in our groups? How did the model and you get along? And there's a lot of unpacking we have to do of our own trauma and our own grief beliefs. Sometimes we're like, I'm going to get in the group and I'm going to fix everybody, right? That's what worked for me. So everybody's going to be like this. We unpack all that in those 3 days. And so that's kind of what you said, like leveling the playing field.
Yes.
We say like, there's no grief literacy. And so our goal is to increase how well we speak the language of grief. Like, let's learn to speak grief to each other, not avoid it, right? Like, oh, you're speaking, okay, let's figure out the dialect that we can speak together so that we can better communicate. We've all experienced grief probably in our lives. Most of us have experienced a death. But the way we assume that people speak grief the same way we do, oh, well, my mom died and it wasn't that big of a deal. I don't know why this person is making such a big deal about it, right? While grief is universal, it's individual for everybody.
Yeah.
And it's like why the 3-day training is so important. Like that 3 days debunks all the myths. Like I was talking to somebody the other day who was like, I love teaching the stages of grief. And we were like, like Elizabeth Kubler-Ross wrote the stages of grief for people who were dying, not people who survived the death of someone. Like you don't go through these 5 stages and then accept the death. You go round and round that mountain over and over again. And maybe it's less severe as time passes. But if you experienced it as severe again 20 years later on the anniversary, that's also normal, right? Like, there's just so much that we need to do when we level the playing field. And so I love our trainings. Let's say you didn't want to be a volunteer and you just want to go through a training. We have webinars that are online for free. You can pay to get credit for social workers to go through a training to see if you like it. Less than 1% of mental health professionals have ever taken a class on grief.
Yeah.
Got it.
That's our mic dropper for this session.
Yeah, that part. Thank you both, Lyndsay and Dara, for coming on. I know you guys had an event right before this, and so you guys rushed over to where you are now to log in and sharing Imagine with our family at All Politics Are Local. We greatly
Asia, I know you're not gonna forget.
I'm not. I'm segueing. Don't do that. Don't do that.
All right.
Do my job.
All right.
Thank you both so much for having us. I don't know what's coming next.
Before you leave, before Zaid now, put me on the spot. Before you leave, this is All Politics Are Local. And we asked all of our guests this one question. I haven't prepared you guys for this, and so I hope it doesn't catch you off balance. But because we're All Politics Are Local, who is your favorite rap artist, rap group, and or rap song?
Oh, I'm ready to answer that. That's very easy.
Right. Go ahead, Adira.
My favorite rap artist is Remy Ma.
Okay.
My favorite rap group is actually MOP.
Oh.
And yeah, I know it's why it's so easy for me. And one of my favorite songs is Annie Up. Pretty much my theme song to get me going every day.
I know that's right. Oh, I love that. Are you from New York? Because you said Remy Ma. And so usually...
No, I'm just that big of a fan of her that I know how to say it right. Remy Ma.
Period. I know that's right. Period. Say less. Lyndsay, do you have any?
I really, if I'm being honest, I think the only music I get to listen to right now is what comes out of my 7-year-old's iPad. So I have to pass on that one, unfortunately, but I appreciate it. I appreciate music, everything I can hear in between putting a 7-year-old to bed and teaching a 17-year-old how to drive. And then running my day job, I'm like, more music in my life. If I can get it, I will take it.
You are a rap song. Like, you are living a rap song in the moment.
The drive is a trip.
So God bless.
I just want to add something before these ladies leave. First off, I want to thank Asia for inviting you guys to come on. But I want to say that your organization is extremely, extremely important. I was listening, backstage to what you all were saying, and I just recently lost my sister, and I can tell you that all of the services and all of the steps that you said we went through that, and I could just imagine if this kind of organization was available in South Carolina, you would definitely have our family. Because I think that this what you guys are doing really needs to be duplicated nationally. And just want you to know you have a home here. Anytime you guys want to come through and share anything with the community, know that All Politics Are Local as a community drum is available to you ladies. And Asia, thank you so much.
If I can, in 2018, when my husband died, I came to the mountainside location of our center, and there was a picture on the wall, and Asia was in it. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I'm home. Like, my Asia is in this photo. And I remember reaching out and being like, how do you know Imagine? I was a principal in the city at the time. I was the principal of Newark Collegiate Academy. And it felt like we were supposed to be bringing this to our city. And Asia has been a champion of Imagine from the get-go. And it matters so much. I think one of the final things I'll leave you with is, yes, we've opened the location at 570 Broad Street, but Newark families are welcome at either and both. And I just want to say that because sometimes anonymity in grief is really important. Like, you want to go somewhere where nobody knows you, nobody knows your story sometimes. And so if being in your home city and sharing your story with people that you might be like, they know it, I don't want to tell stories there, come to the mountainside location. Like, there is no boundaries of the support that we can give. And we offer virtual. And so if virtual support is safer and you want to log on from the safety of your home, like, we will meet you wherever you are. And thank you all for having us and for the beautiful and brilliant work you all do.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your evening. And like Ed said, you're part of the family.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
Very good. Very good. That was right on time, Nathan. It was right on time. And it's actually a good segue for this next segment, because we have voices from two national organizations that play important support lanes for what we do here in Newark as well. This is Jordan coming on. We're waiting for Jermaine to jump in, and we're already starting a few minutes late. So I want to give them the justice that they're due. When we talk about community-based violence intervention in Newark and in other places in the state, we think of our frontline forces, the folks that we know actually on the ground doing the work. But this work requires resources of a multi-dimensional kind: material resources, professional resources, administrative resources, data resources, all kind of stuff that we need in order to, quote, legitimize and garner the respect and support for this work. And there are organizations, national organizations, by virtue of how well they're resourced, that come in and help entities on the ground, like our street team and our New Jersey City anti-violence movement coalition and our Patterson Healing Collective, our different forces in the ground on different places. In fact, the two national partners that we're looking to bring into this conversation now are two national partners that are doing that, have their hands on, our partners on the ground doing critical work, but are also playing important roles in facilitating our partners' capacity to advocate for what they need in a united voice. We have a coalition, the New Jersey Violence Intervention and Prevention Programs Coalition, that was key in fighting for some important money that was supposed to go to hospitals a couple years ago, that was threatened in a very unceremonious way. And then later, of course, the tragedy around the mental health crisis, police killings of Najee Seabrooks and Andrew Washington, that led to the creation of the bill called the Seabrooks-Washington bill. That coalition had some help. Those voices trying to get this help, had some help, and had some great help from the Giffords Foundation and the Health Alliance. I've been used to saying the HAVI, I forget the whole damn acronym. The Health Alliance Against Violence Intervention. I'm getting it wrong. Jermaine, come on in. He didn't come in yet. I don't know why he didn't come in yet. Right? Jordan, I got you, right? Dr. Jordan Costa. Welcome to All Politics Are Local. And Jermaine has finally gotten in here. Good. Right? And I was trying to big y'all up as you were coming in. Welcome to All Politics Are Local. I'm sorry we're a little late in our segment, but we want to get in what we want to get in from you. First, I want each of you to do this. One, tell us about the work of your respective organizations, the strategic character of your work. But before you do that, tell your own stories. What brought you to the work? Why that's important, right? And Jordan, you absolutely need to report it, and Jermaine, you should share your impressions too of the great conference. Giffords does an annual conference that brings us all together from around the country, right? And it's something that we all look forward to and we all appreciate, because it really does help us and our capacity to speak in a larger united voice is going to be key to the sustaining of this work. So let's start there in that basic place, and then we can get into some of the nuts and bolts of what that looks like on the ground for our community. This is a community-based, platform, right? So you ain't got to talk, be concerned about PhD language. You make it plain, right? Keep it simple. You're talking to your folks, all right? Jordan, let me start with you. Go ahead. You go ahead and start. And I want to thank you too, Jordan. You made Jordan took the stage and lit the place up on our second day, and lifted up somebody we love in a very affectionate way that you just couldn't resist, right? So I just wanted to say how I'm proud of you. You did very well about that, right? And I hope the organization lifts that up in the pushing out of the moments shared from the conference, so we can move the value of the conference into the spaces where we need it. So let's start with you, Jordan. Come on in, tell us your story, then tell us the Gifford story.
Oh God. Okay. Let me try and do it quickly. But as I said on stage, and I'll say it again here, I've learned that in the last couple of years, I've become affectionately known in this movement as Jordan from Jersey. So this is a very fitting podcast for me to be on. But my personal story, I would say in my reflections, began when I was 8 years old after my dad died by gun violence. And I really appreciated the conversation that preceded this one that was talking about grief, because for a very, very long time, no one ever told me how he passed away. I just knew one day my dad was here and the next day he was gone. And I think in an effort to try and protect me from confronting really adult things at a very young age, I reflect now and think maybe more harm was done in trying to shelter me from that truth, because I just had to process it a lot later in life. So I actually didn't know how he passed away until I was 21 years old. But by that time, I had already gotten involved in CVI work prior to it being named CVI work. I was doing hospital-based violence intervention work at 18 years old. I was doing street outreach work at 18 years old. And that was all because I went to a school in Maryland. I had a professor that what was the name of the class? The prison industrial complex. I was in that class. I went up to that professor in his office hours and I was like, I want to be you one day. And he was like, for us Black and brown people, it doesn't work like that. Like, I can't just nepotism my way into getting you into this space, but I can take you under my wing. And he absolutely did that. Zaid, Jermaine, since you were there at the conference this past week, that was Dr. Joseph Richardson, who was on that research panel with me.
Okay.
He took me under his wing at 18 years old, and we've been connected ever since, obviously. And in an effort to try and be like him, I went on to pursue my PhD, not because I knew what it was, but I knew that what we were doing in the hospital and the ways that we were effectuating change in these young men's lives in the aftermath of really unimaginable tragedies was working, but there was no data to tell you how it was working, what elements of these programs were working. And so someone told me a PhD would help you figure that out. So I did it. I'm the first I'm first generation American. My family's from Cuba. First generation to go to college. I had no blueprint to know what to do. Someone just told me, do a PhD. And I did that. And then I finished out of spite, honestly. And so I completed that. But along the way, obviously, it's very expensive to live in North Jersey. So I was able to dabble in different sectors like philanthropy, policy. And I got this full-time job at Giffords at the Center for Violence Intervention as their senior project manager, which is kind of a catch-all for multiple things that I do. So one of the things is obviously managing all our projects. I also bring my researcher lens to this space and in the way that I either identify projects that we should pursue or just the way that I strategize around certain policy topics that we should focus on. I'm also part of the New Jersey Violence Intervention and Prevention Coalition, where I try to lend some of that strategic thinking and also utilize the resources that Big G Giffords has that our team tries to plug into the different states and cities that we're connected to. So I guess I'll explain just very briefly about how Giffords, a lot of people know Gabby Giffords and holding the gun industry accountable. But our center is 7 people that is kind of an offshoot of that. It's an arm of the broader Giffords organization, and we're able to tap into different teams, but our team specifically is focused on community violence intervention work. Over half of our team has served on the front lines doing direct service work. Most of our team are survivors in their own right. And so when we tap into these different spaces, it's not like a national organization that parachutes in and tells you what you should be doing, but it's people who have the same language to understand the challenges that you're describing, the nuances of your community. And my job is to connect that with people in our government and translate it from what I understand you to be experiencing and how they interpret that with the tools that we have to speak to them in their very specific kinds of ways. Because the way we talk on the ground is not the way that they talk in government. So I'm kind of the liaison in between so that message gets across.
We often need that too. We need that.
Yeah.
Remind folks about Gabby Giffords. So this is the short version of her story because it's been a few years. Some this is a younger audience in many respects. They may not know or be readily familiar with her story, but it's an important story.
Yeah. So Gabby Giffords in 2011, she was speaking to her constituents in Arizona. She used to do these things called Congress on the Corner. She was outside of a public space, just talking to her constituents about her policy.
She was outside of a supermarket. Yeah.
A supermarket, right? Mm-hmm. Yep. And this man came with a mission to kill her. He shot her in the head. He shot, I believe it was 13 others. A young girl, 9 years old, was killed that day too, as well as Gabby's assistant. And that was also around the same time of the Sandy Hook shooting. So that was the period in which Gabby decided to become the principal face of our organization. And we took a more concerted focus on gun violence specifically in her honor. And yeah, she's still, some people, I don't think they realize that Gabby's not just the face of this organization. She travels more than anybody else here. Yes. She has aphasia now, so it's not always very easy for her to speak, but she can completely understand what you're saying and be in conversation with you. Every time she sees me, she sees my necklace with the Cuban pendant, and she always says Cuba, Cuba, Cuba. But she is so animated and so positive, and she breathes life into me on the days that I get really tired from this work, because a woman like that persevering through everything that she has and still maintaining the optimism that she does is really inspiring, and it keeps me, motivated in the movement.
And
I-
Dr.
I
Jordan,
actually-
I'm just sorry, I just wanted to say, when that happened in Minnesota, my first thought went to, oh my gosh, Gabby got to go through this again. That was one of my first thoughts was, of course, for the sorrow what's going in Minnesota, but to think that she is going to have to relive this again. And it also should be her husband and how she fought to come back and what she, to see her is so inspiring. And her husband, who was actually born in Orange and raised in West Orange,
Mm-hmm.
and the work, that he did to take care of her and that he's doing in the community. So that team right there. But I know when that happened in Minnesota, she was at the top. I was like, she has to relive this again. And I can't even imagine what she's going through.
Yeah, that was one of her friends. And I thought the same thing. Like, it is such a specific experience for someone to want to kill you that I can't even describe the trauma that she must be experiencing. And then also, candidly, without the ability to express herself fully, which is a whole nother level of challenge. But
nevertheless, with her intentionality, she has done well beyond survival. She has really created and turned Giffords into a real force to be reckoned with on that front. And Donna, that's where I was going before you jumped in. And this is Donna K. Williams, a former councilwoman from Orange, very popular in Orange when she was a city council. And so you heard her ties, right?
Yep.
So she understands these ties, right? Jermaine, you can jump in and share us your story and tell us about HAVI, the HAVI. You're muted, Jermaine. We can't hear you.
Yeah, Jermaine, go back out and come back in because something's going on. I can see your mic is off.
Oh, check your volume.
Yeah. Keep saying 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Can't hear you. Yeah.
Do your mic check. Do your mic check.
Yeah, go out, come back in, and check your mic before you come back in.
Yeah, it's
Dr.
all right.
Costa, Dr. Costa, I wanted to ask you, this time is compounded because you have an administration, grief allows you to go through certain things. Somebody calls and says, I'm sorry, what can we do? That didn't happen this time. I believe as last I checked, there was no call from the Washington, and there was a lot of cynicism that went on. And I think and it was funny because I remember when the chief of police came out and spoke and said that, hey, if somebody comes to your door, we're coming in doubles and everything. And I looked at the mask that the person was. I was wondering, was he trying to impersonate? And just the level, we're kind of stuck, right there because part of beginning healing is when you get a call and somebody says, I'm sorry this happened. What can we do? And that didn't happen. I mean, other than at the level of Governor Walz and her colleagues and things like that. So how do you reconcile that part that our leaderships are just not leading?
I think that's the power of community, honestly. I think, yes, we want leadership in our government, and they have their own incentive structures that don't always keep us top of mind. And so my energy is less spent on developing cynicism around that and pouring more into the people around me and the communities that have a different vision for something better, and seeing how I can support them and how we can support each other, because in numbers we'll have more power and more visibility, and people will not be able to minimize us or pretend that we don't exist. And so even though that's a very real tension that exists, it's only as real as much as you feed into it. Not to say that the structural conditions that they change and harm us with aren't real, but there is power in community that I find to be reliable.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Jermaine, how you
Jermaine,
sound?
how you sounding?
Okay, can you hear me now?
We
Loud and
got
clear.
you
Look at that.
Okay, good, good, good. Yeah. First of all, I just want to just say thank you for allowing me to be here today. It is always an honor to be amongst my my brother and my sister here, Jordan. Thank you so much. Again, my name is Jermaine Belcher. I'm the Senior Coordinator of Policy at the HAVI, the Health Alliance for Violence Intervention. And I come to this work probably similar to you know, some other folks. My brother was actually a perpetrator many years ago, and I grew up I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, born and raised. I live outside of Milwaukee now, but during that time, Milwaukee was experiencing some of the highest levels of violence at that particular time. This was back in the late 80s, early 90s. I still remember when Milwaukee hit over 100 homicides. And when you think about the city of Milwaukee, the population is only about 500,000 people, and most of those homicides occurred within a very small area. And so I grew up in that area and was involved, unfortunately, in not the violence, but I was involved in you know, selling drugs and doing some other things that you know, that folks were doing at that time. I had a lot of mentors that would come later into my life, but at that time I didn't have them. And so after my brother committed his crime, he was facing, during that time in Milwaukee, you had a lot of young people that were being waived into adult court for the violence that they were committing, because Milwaukee just had not experienced those levels of violence before.
There's this famous.
Yes. And so my brother at the time was, I believe he was 15, and the people that he also was involved in with this one particular incident were, I believe, 15 and 14. And so my brother was facing like 25 years in a penitentiary. And so, I mean, I just like, it was a wake up call for me, because I felt like I should have been the one that should have been in his situation because of the things that I was doing. I just hadn't been caught. And so when my brother was facing that time, it was my wake up call. And so, I mean, I just basically renounced that way of life. I just was like, man, whatever I can do to save my brother, but to save my community. I mean, it became really real for me at that time. His friend, who was 14, was waived into adult court. And I believe he ended up doing, I forget how much time he did, but he ended up going to prison, I believe, at 16 years old. And so to this day, you know, I'm still engaged with that young man who's an adult now and has a family and turned his life around. All of them turned their lives around in this particular situation. But one of the gentlemen ended up becoming a victim of a gunshot. And to this day, he still is impacted by it. And so that, you know, was like my wake up call. And so I began to get involved in community organizing. I didn't know what to do. I got involved in going to like the prisons, and I was trying to talk to anybody that I could talk to about getting out of that life. And so I ended up hearing about a hospital violence intervention program in Milwaukee that was just starting at that particular time. It's called Project Ujima, and start volunteering with that program, working in the EDTC and emergency department, going to see young people who have been victims of violence, you know, seeing, you know, kids who have been brutalized in just the worst way that you could imagine. And so that was kind of like my first entry into this type of work. So any way that I could be involved in it, I wanted to be involved. I also became very interested in politics at the time too. Not necessarily that I wanted to be a politician or anything like that, but I was interested in the policy component. I was like, what can we do to get resources in Milwaukee? Because at that time, and unfortunately, Milwaukee is going through something similar right now, but it was bleak. When you looked at the socioeconomic conditions of African Americans and brown people in the city of Milwaukee, the highest infant mortality rate, one of the highest high school dropout rates. As a matter of fact, there's a zip code called 53206 53206 that they did a documentary on, that the BBC featured, and it's a small geographical area, but it has one of the highest, at that particular time, it had the highest incarceration rate in the United States. And when you think about the population of Wisconsin, the majority of African Americans live in the city of Milwaukee. We only make up 13% of the population, but we make up the majority of the prison population. And to Jordan's point about the prison pipeline, that was very evident and still is evident now here in the city of Milwaukee. And so that began my entry into this work. I volunteered for, I forget how long I volunteered at the HVIP in Milwaukee, but I eventually ended up working for a member of Congress. And, I did whatever I could as far as helping the community, help folks get out of that life. I ended up going out to, years later, I ended up going out to DC and worked out on Capitol Hill and did policy out there. And so I never looked back. Years later, I ended up getting hired at that HVIP and worked there for many years in different capacities. First as a frontline worker, and then secondly as kind of a bridge between the administration of the hospital and the frontline workers, and working on some equity and issues such as that, as far as folks having empathy when they're working with our clients and with our populations. So that's how I came to this work. I always knew about the HAVI, even when I was working at this particular HVIP. Never ever desired to work at the HAVI. I thought it was a great organization, but I just was involved in so many other things. Entrepreneur, I was doing just different things. And so I ended up hearing about an opening in policy for, several years ago, applied for the position, and, knew several people, again, at the HAVI, but just never thought about me actually working here. The HAVI is a national organization. It's a hospital network, hospital-based network of over 50 hospital-based violence intervention programs across the United States. My particular role is that I work on identifying funding streams on a federal, state, local level, and helping to stand up programs to be able to access those funding streams, and really focusing and honing in on diversification of funding streams to ensure that programs have long-term sustainability.
That's an important place to go next. Diversification of funding streams, so folks can be stable in doing this work. We are in our second run of Donald Trump and his effort to implement Project 2025 and all of its unapologetic ugliness and total lack of sympathy and empathy, right? Generally speaking, in the particulars you want to be, right? And both of you have ties to our work here in Jersey. If you want to, illustrate what that means here. But what does it mean to be a national partner in this particular critical moment, where a once very embracing funding stream has suddenly turned violently hostile and is making itself totally unavailable? What does that do to help your partners, your local partners, get through these challenges?
I could start out by saying that even though we are in a dark time right now, and I'm being real genteel, we're in a dark time right now. I'm glad that we are a national organization that we can leverage the fact that we're a national organization to be able to access resources, or attempt to access resources, to be a voice in those rooms where folks may not be able to have access to those rooms. And so that gives me hope but I feel privileged and honored, in spite of, you know, what we're going through right now, to be able to be that voice. Not saying that folks can't speak for themselves, but to be that collective voice in those spaces where folks may not be able to go to. Just about a month ago, we were out in DC on the Hill, meeting with senators, meeting with members of Congress, advocating, pushing back on these funding cuts. And it felt really good to be able to be in those spaces. Some folks that support these cuts, but mainly amongst friends that are against these cuts. But nevertheless, we were able to be a voice in those spaces. Mm-hmm. And so really leveraging the position of being a national organization to go into places where folks may not be able to go into, and holding people to the carpet, and being collectively working with other national organizations, but also using data, because we know that we know how important data is. I know, Jordan, obviously with your background, Jordan, just really being able to use this data and
show the data to prove that this stuff works.
That it's been working. And so I just want to just highlight real quick, places like Baltimore that have seen significant drops in community violence because of this work, because of the this evidence-informed work that we've been doing. And so being able to utilize that data, and then also in places such as Oakland, California, and many other places across the United States, and use that data to illustrate the impactfulness of this work.
I would just add to that, in addition to opening access, I think the privilege of being a national partner is having the bird's eye view to say, okay, they're doing this in New Jersey, and this in California, and this in Texas. So when New Jersey Violence Intervention and Prevention Coalition gets fed up, I can tell you, well, in California, they're doing this, and I don't know if it's going to work here, but let's try and see if it works. So for example, like with the diversification of funding for CVI programs in California, they put a tax on ammo that's directly funding, a fraction of that is directly funding CVI programs. In New Jersey, we talked about the cannabis revenue potentially being an option. And I want to say it's Wisconsin, they're taxing vape products. There's another state that's taxing license plates. And I think Kansas City uses sales tax or something like that. So I think that's one of my greatest benefits in being a national partner, is allowing people to think creatively about things that work in their particular regions by being tied to these different spaces and places, where I can even offer that and maybe some type of blueprint for how it went there and see if it works in another place.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed. Now both of you have two different slants, but you both have been in one particular space. Jermaine, hospital intervention is hugely important and is one of the first critical touch points in this work, right? I have been on the bad side of when we didn't have it at all in this town, and I was treated like a criminal when I had a hole that it was blown through my behind, right? We're in a very different space as a consequence of that, right? Jordan, you were embedded beautifully with a wonderful partner that we have in the Patterson Healing Collective. Share out, if you want, about some of the importance of each space, right? Those kind of spaces.
You're talking about like a HVIP and
yes.
the CVI work of
yes.
Yeah. So in my time doing HVIP work, I mean, I think it's transformative to be among the first people someone sees in an incredibly vulnerable moment. Like you have people coming in. Well, I would go into the trauma unit after seeing that someone had come in with a GSW or a stab wound and try and be the first face or among the first faces they seen. Sometimes that you can't control that.
GSW being gunshot wound, everybody. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yes. The gunshot wound. That was a PhD acronym. But my job was really to go bedside with the violence intervention worker that was training me to understand what were the conditions that got you shot in the first place, and knowing that you are going to be discharged from here and go back to that same community, how can we make sure that you're safe? And so we would try and do whatever we could in the time that we had them, and they refer to that in the literature as a teachable moment, because people are more receptive to changing when there's these life-threatening circumstances that they're currently navigating. And so after they've been discharged, I would help go to court with them if they were facing a charge, or visit them in school, or have them come back to the office. And there were things that I learned in that time about relationship building, like specifically at the time, Uber Health was a thing that was an option, and you could send Ubers to people's houses to pick them up and bring them to the hospital to have their follow-up appointments. What we learned is that those guys were not getting in cars with people who they did not know. So even though we were trying to offer a resource, they weren't utilizing it because of these things that were not being culturally shaped to the population that we were trying to serve. And so I learned a lot, and that's what I'm talking about. I went to go pursue my PhD to try and further the evidence for these things, because there's this public health approach that's being used to shape these interventions, which is awesome. But the experiences of people who are navigating gunshot injuries and stab wounds and penetrative wounds in the social conditions in which they're happening is very specific. And so who is talking about that? And then as far as Patterson, they take it to another level by being embedded in street outreach. They have their own HVIP. They hold community events. And what's different about them in comparison to the one that I worked at is just that everybody knows them in the city. Everyone is able to be touched by programming that PHC does. And talk about diversification of funding. They mix and match whatever they can to both pay their staff, also invest in wellness for their staff, yes, and then fill in the gaps where the city of Patterson has left people abandoned. And so that is, I could go on and on about the different services that they offer. I don't want to take up space for Jermaine's reactions to HVIPs. But
I just seen Jada Kiss in Patterson with the PhD. I was like, so
listen.
I missed that.
Yeah, I was like, Jada, that's, I'm a big fan of Jada. Well, we've gone overtime, and we have a very important question to ask. And the question is, and Jermaine or Jordan, whomever chooses to answer first, this is a hip hop political show. And when you're doing the work that you're doing, when you're getting ready to go out that door, whether it's speaking, whether it's doing community work, the door to door, meeting people in the community, what hip hop artist or individual or group do you listen to that gets you going and inspires you?
Wow. That's a deep question. And I can't really do that question justice, but I will say this, I'm an old soul. I'm an old soul. And so, East, I know that whole beef back in the day about East Coast, West Coast, and then you had the South rise up and all the other places. I'm a huge KRS-One fan, and I'm a huge Master P fan, just because, there was not a whole lot. I mean, there were things going on in the South, but he changed the game. I felt like, back in the day. So, and I actually got a chance. My wife graced me by taking me to a Master P conference,
right.
a Master P concert about 3 years ago. So I got a chance.
Actually, you could go to a Master P conference too, because he knows how to show people how to make some money. So
I'm telling you. So those would be my two artists. One from the East Coast, from the old school, and then Master P.
Okay, so you want to make some money, and you must learn. Okay, Dr. Jordan.
So I'm an old soul, but I do like young people music. I would say Snow the Product. She is a Mexican rapper from California, and she just in her lyrics, it's always a political commentary, but it's also the intersection of like immigration and violence and very specific experiences that resonate with me. But to trap beats in ways that I think if people were open to listening to Spanish trap music,
she's radical. That what you're saying? That's
You
what
said
I'm talking
Patterson. That's trap. What's my dude from Patterson with the trap music?
The one Project X.
No, you locked up right now. What's my
Fetty Wap.
Fetty Wap. That's right.
I also loved him in college.
Okay. Now who was now? But we gotta look her up. What's her name?
Snow the Product.
Okay.
Snow like Snow White.
Or cocaine, but yeah.
Okay, we got.
She's dope.
All right, we will be researching that.
Well, what I know we get ready to start another segment, but I really wanted you to say something very quickly, if you could, each of you, just quickly, takeaways from the conference and in this difficult time that we're in, with all the folks you know, all the folks you touch, what gives you hope at this moment?
Honestly, so this is the third year we've had the conference, and we convened over 900 people that even in the midst of having less resources, probably less hope, and it's very easy to want to give up at this time, found the ways and the means to be there. And I acknowledged it in my day 2 remarks. There are also people that were not there that should be there, that because of funding cuts were unable to be. And there's people that we've lost in the movement that, or in our lives, that are not there, and that absence is felt. And so what gives me hope is that people, even in the midst of all these challenges, are still showing up. And so as long as people still want to show up and be in community together, I think my responsibility is to continue to hold that space using the resources that we have. And so that's what gives me hope, is all of you.
Straight ahead.
I'll say real quickly, what gives me hope is to see us collectively working together. I'm really geeked about this, about the whole thing about the state coalitions. I know that there have always been state coalitions, but I really feel like folks are leaning in on that now because we know that, we all we got, right? And so people are really leaning into that. And so that's what gives me hope, is that, that folks aren't giving up. We come from we come from nothing. And so we know how to make $1 out of 15 cents. We know how to do that. And so I feel like that's what we're doing right now. We're coming together again, and we're putting our resources together and putting on our innovative hats. And so we're going to get this done.
Straight ahead. And I'm supremely proud of both of you. And you know that, right? And it's an honor to have you both on. This is a community drum that is welcome and open to you at any time, should you need it, right? You ain't got to wait on me to bug you, Jordan, right? Y'all, if you something you want to get out, do you think the community needs to hear? Here's a space, a safe space where we can certainly sound that drum. So I'm proud of each of you, and this is just, although it's your first time, it's definitely not going to be your last time here in this space. All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
everyone.
Have a blessed weekend.
You too.
Take care, everyone.
Chairman Hamm, 18% only voted in the primary in Essex County. What's going on?
18%.
18%.
Well, that's par for the course, right?
No, it's usually at 30. It's usually 30, but why? And Mayor Baraka, kind of alluded to it, but people got to vote.
Primary turnout is always lower.
Yes.
So I'm always concerned about that.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that it's always lower doesn't make it right. The primary turnout should be higher, whether it was 18% or whether it was 30%. This is a phenomenon, though, that's not just in Essex County. This is a national phenomenon. People generally are tuning out, have tuned out from politics, and are not exercising their right to vote. The fact of the matter is, roughly 25% of the voters actually select who the president is going to be. And this is unfortunate. It has a lot to do with the structure of voting in the United States. with the structure, the laws, the policies, the practices, all of that combines. It's not just citizens' output, citizens' apathy, rather. I mean, for instance, why aren't voting booths in workplaces? Why are voting booths only in designated spots in the community? I mean, voting booths certainly work for teachers, but then the teachers can't vote in the voting booths in their schools because they have to go to the polling place where they're registered, in the district where they're registered. The whole system, what we have to come to grips with is that the whole system is designed to, in fact, keep people from voting in a really meaningful way. Because if all the obstacles were removed, there would be a titanic flood of new voters who would probably vote against a lot of the people that are in office, both Democrat and Republican. But, you know, that's aspirational. There's a long way we have to go. And I think what people should be focusing on right now, the primary is over. The general election is in November. And what folks who are opposed to what Donald Trump is doing, they should be out this summer, this month, July, August, September into October, doing massive voter registration. I saw a statistic earlier this week, Ed, that said, I'm trying to remember, Kane, I think it was, Whitman. It was Whitman and Florio. Remember when Florio was governor?
Right.
She beat Florio by 1,700 votes.
Yes, it was very close. That's right.
1,700, not 17,000. 1,700. So people think their vote doesn't count. You know, the 1,700 people who didn't come out that day gave us Whitman as governor. And when we look back at the general election, the last gubernatorial general election, Chitterelli had 1 point some odd million votes. Murphy had 1 point some odd million. Murphy only beat Chitterelli by 50,000 votes.
That's right.
Now, 50,000 sounds like a lot, but when you compare it to 1 point, whatever, let's just say 1.3 million is not a lot of votes. So this election is going to be determined by who gets the most people out to vote. And so I really think that we should be working on voter education, registration, and mobilization for September. But the good news is, I want to say that the mayor won Essex County. He won his city by a large margin. He won Essex County against the Essex County Democratic machine. He won Union County.
I'll say something about Union later. Go ahead.
Right. He beat Fulop in his own city.
Sure
in
did.
Jersey City. There were 6 candidates.
Waiting for that.
Mayor Baraka came in second out of the 6. And he had over 170,000 votes. And Mikey Sherrill had roughly, I think, somewhere around 265,000 votes. So somewhere in that range. So he beat everybody behind him. He beat Fulop, who had a lot of money. He beat Gottheimer, who had more money. In fact, Fulop had more money than the mayor. Gottheimer had more money than the mayor. I don't know if Sweeney had more money, but Sweeney was the former Senate president. He beat him. And he beat Sean Spiller, who had $40 million.
$40 million.
So I think the mayor acquitted himself well on the electoral battlefield.
And when you're
but
running
that's
election, And when you run an election, you have one of the good things is when you win where you live at. That's a very good thing. That you
It's a
won
very
where
good
you
thing.
live. That's right.
You don't want to get beat in your own hometown.
That's right.
Not a good look.
That's
and
right.
he won by a lot in Newark.
That's right.
He won by a lot. When you look at the numbers, he won by a lot over Cheryl.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so, but the primary is over now. The question is, who is Mikey Sherrill going to appoint as her lieutenant governor candidate? And then the question is, are we going to do what we need to do to win the general election? You know, and I think we need to look, in
Larry,
that direction.
But Larry, let me ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know if you heard the mayor when he was on earlier tonight.
Mm-hmm. No, I didn't hear.
So,
I was in Baltimore. I just got back from Baltimore.
Oh, welcome back, brother.
Yeah, I just got off the road. Zaid, I had Dashawn with me.
Okay.
He rode down with me and rode back. And we listened to Gil Scott Heron all the way back from Baltimore.
I know you did. I know you did.
Go ahead, Ed. I'm sorry.
You should have made him drive, but of course he don't drive. He don't have a license.
That's right.
He's a young man. You should have been able to sit on the other side, Larry. Chill out. You know. Next time you go, Larry, we got to give you a younger driver, somebody that can.
Well, I'd appreciate it. It wasn't a problem going down. It was a struggle coming back, though. I ain't gonna lie, it was a struggle coming back.
Yeah, the excitement is always going. It's never coming back.
Yeah,
you know
the adrenaline was up. We got there in 2 hours and 45 minutes.
That's great.
You know, was on time, was down there with Sister Tamika Mallory. I got to meet Pastor Jamal Bryant down there today. This was the State of the People Assembly. It was the conclusion.
Okay. They did Newark on May 13th.
Right. It was the conclusion of the State of the People tour. So I got to see some of the luminaries that were down there today, but I really got to meet Jamal Bryant.
He's got his own podcast too, by the way. Melina Abdullah was
today
with him a couple of weeks.
Well, that's where he's from. He had his own church down there called.
I'm surprised you don't, Jamal.
I think we were.
Was, Reverend Watley's son Matthew and Jamal were best friends. So Jamal, when Reverend Watley was here, stayed at St. James. They would come and preach like a tag team when they were young men.
Right. I think we were at the church that Bryant had when he was in Baltimore, Empowerment Temple. Yeah. I think that was the church he was at. And so he was there and he gave a very good talk about the Target thing. But Ed, I don't want to preempt what you were trying to get to. I want to go back to whatever it is you were trying to raise.
So what the mayor said when he was here, because you know, we had an impromptu meeting last Saturday after we left the rally that you know, the No Kings rally that you were doing. Right. We all went over the rocks and had an impromptu meeting, and I accidentally hit Mitty's number. Excuse me. I accidentally hit Mitty's number on my phone. My wife seems to think that it was spiritual, you know.
Oh, all right.
Accidentally, and he was like, "Yo, Ed, where you at?" I said, "We were all over at Rocks," and you know, so he said, "Yo, I'm coming through." So he came through. We had an impromptu meeting, and so you know, we were just airing how we felt. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You know, aired how he felt and so forth. And of course, you know, none of us was feeling the fact that, you know, they trying to play the mayor out by offering him the lieutenant governor. The mayor said tonight, he said that's not his brand, right? You know, so you got all these Negroes, right, and all these slave sellouts that are jumping to that opportunity. But the mayor made it clear he understands that there's no power in that position, right? He's clear on that it's a ceremonial position. And so when you said that, you know, about who the lieutenant governor is, remember, you know, what the mayor stated tonight, and it's true. What's more important, Larry, is because what he said is that Black people would not have even been raised on any of those debates unless he had brought it up.
That's right. He's right.
And so And so what's more important is he said he had already had a conversation with Mickey Sherrill on the phone and so forth. What's more important, Larry, is about being able to put right the interests of Black folks before her and have her committed to doing that. And in my mind, because she doesn't have that level of consciousness, there has to be some sort of from my perspective, I'm always going toward putting things in writing, making people committed because it's legal. But
Mhm.
having her commit to some of the things the mayor laid out, like what's important to Black people, our interests,
Right.
right? That's more important than some ceremonial position that you might give to some Black person, because as he said, these people just seem to think that any old Black person would do, and that Black people just vote for you because you put some Black person there, right? Those days are over, Larry, right? And so the mayor was saying that we've got to go hard now, right? We've got to go hard in terms of what Zahid and I talk about here all the time is a Black united front, right?
Mhm.
There's got to be a Black united front because as Reverend Boyer said, had there been a Black united front from the church, just the church, Larry, he
Mhm.
said mayor would have won. And the mayor said, yeah, I agree with that, right? If there had just been that. Because remember, Larry, one of the things you were saying was that if the mayor got 160,000 votes statewide, he'd win.
Right. Right.
Well, Ed, it's funny you should say that because Chairman opened up with the Whitman Florio, and it was a Black United clergyman that took her over the top, probably because the Black United clergy got against her, came out for Whitman, and that probably took her over the top. Mm-hmm.
But we're working against ourselves, Larry. You see what I'm saying? And so,
Oh, yeah.
One of the other things you talked about is that, he said tonight, he said that there's still people that don't know, Black people that don't know the primary is over. He said he went into some place after his son's graduation, and he said that somebody came up to him and said, "Man, I'm going to vote for you for governor," and he was like, "That's over."
Yeah. But he attributed
but again, Larry, it goes toward us having low information. Right?
But what Larry said, our voting problem and the problems in the U.S. is voter fatigue, and that is I can remember how when we lost Congressman Payne and Congressman Pascrell. I want to say last year there might have been almost 6 elections. So people, because you had to fill those seats and things like that. So voter fatigue is a real thing. I know in Jersey they've kind of done some changes by moving school elections to the general election and things like that, but you strategically don't do that because then you can strategically hold the office of who you want in those seats by having them not during a bigger election. But voter fatigue is a very, 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 very real thing. I think people in a lot of our communities are working 2 and 3 jobs. I know when I was coming up, it was almost like your employer would like, oh, it's election day, you're gonna come in late or leave early. Now with the voting early, they don't see that need anymore. And then a lot of people, although you had that big time of voting early, a lot of people took advantage, but some didn't. And so it has to be, but as I said to the mayor, the Republican candidate is already out campaigning in Essex County. I see his signs up. I mean, right here, I'm driving around seeing them in my town. And, and I remember when he ran against Murphy the second time, when he came into our community, he came into our parks. He was he was out there. He was campaigning really hard. And I can tell, and he's already doing it. The day after the primary, his signs were up in our local area. I sent a letter to everybody that Congresswoman, she's appointed Senator Gopal as the campaign chair. Vice chair is Karen Elkins, who was the former top advisor to 2-3 senators, and Justin Dews, who is a Jersey City lawyer. Mayor Baraka says Senator Gopal is a very good person, but I think that, and I'm sure it's going to expand, and I hope we can't take any assumptions, but I remember when Bernie Sanders was running, and while he did not win, he moved that Democratic agenda. He moved that. And I think Mayor Baraka has moved the agenda, and she has to incorporate what he said, and also use him and others as surrogates, because everybody can't go everywhere, and people, like you said, voter registration, signs, this whole thing, commercial, this new way of campaigning. We need to get back to opening up campaign places by wards, give people jobs, have people going door to door. This, campaign season
party
is very
put
serious.
up money to do that in our community.
Well, everybody has big war chests, and they need to spend that money and stop just holding on to that money for I don't know what. You open the space so people can start seeing you. We have to.
And
this
Larry,
is serious.
the mayor said that tonight. He said that everybody can't go everywhere, right?
That's right.
Right.
People can't go certain places, right? And for them to think that just any Black person is going to be able to go into any community and garner because he said there's no enthusiasm, right now.
Or just sending me a mailer every day is not enthusiastic either. Or doing a commercial. No. You know why the mayor did? Because he went and touched people. He knocked on doors. He campaigned. He was up and down this state from Cape May to the top. He went everywhere, twice probably.
But what's important, Larry, is listen. What I said to the mayor tonight, and this is important, Larry, because for all of us, right? It's always been the lesser of two evils for us, man. That's always been the way it's been for us, right? And the mayor said tonight that he agreed that under no circumstances can we allow Chitterelli to win because of his policies, right?
Right.
So he's right about that. But we also need to make sure that what I said to the mayor is that they're not going, because in my mind, they can't win without Mayor Baraka. Right. Because these, and the mayor gave the numbers. He said because all of these other mayors who supported her, he beat all of them in their own districts, right? And so these people have no power, right? But they just got Black faces, and because they're trying to promote their own interests, and the only one who stood their ground was Mayor Warren. Right. And what Rock said to us, on Saturday, and the mayor said he agreed. Rock said that had they all just held the line and went to the party bosses and said, hey, look, you know what? On this one, we got to support.
That's right.
And Rock said that he believed that they would have gave them more respect, and the mayor would have won. You think about it. Had they held the line, and what Boyer said, had the Black church held the line, we'd be talking about the first Black governor having an opportunity to win, right, against a Republican candidate at this point, right? That's what we'd be talking about, Larry. But because we have no unity, but the mayor said that, he said there's going to be a meeting on the 28th down at Reverend Boyer's church, and he said that there's some Black folks that are being invited in, and we're going to have a hard conversation on the 28th, brother. Right. So
I agree. I agree with everything you've said, and you echoed. I agree with the premises that you echoed that the mayor said. At this point, speed is of the essence. If there's going to be a Black United Front, we got to hurry up and get it together. If there's a Black agenda that has to be presented to Cheryl, we have to hurry up, put it together, and Mayor Baraka or his designee or whomever has to present it to her. Speed is important because let me say this now on the 20th of June. Donna, what's the date of election day?
In November?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the
Give me a
6th, right? Is
Yeah,
it
it's
the
first
6th?
Tuesday. I'll tell you 1 second. Yeah, I'll tell you 1 second.
I don't have it.
I got it 1 second. This is June, July, August, November 4th.
Okay, November 4th.
Mhm.
On November 5th, if Chitterelli is elected, all of this that we are saying now will pale in comparison. You know, it's like when you know, there's such a thing as there's such a thing as too late. There is such a thing as too late. You can miss the bus. You can miss the train. You can miss an opportunity. So I agree with everything that's being said. The United Front, the Black Agenda, but we can't be in August still talking about we need a United Front. Like, the United Front got to happen now, and the Black Agenda got to happen next week. I'm speaking hypothetically here, or metaphorically. So,
Or realistically.
you know, Chitterelli is Trump's endorsed candidate. Trump did not even wait for the primary to conclude. He went in during the primary season and he endorsed Chitterelli and he campaigned for him. A Republican governor, whatever the Democrat, whatever Murphy was able to stave off in terms of what Trump wants to do here in New Jersey, and he has staved off some things, that protection will disappear if Chitterelli is elected. It will disappear. People don't really understand how critical the situation is. I mean, have people been talking about this budget bill? I mean, there's all kind of stuff in there that has nothing to do with money, with budget. First of all,
about the federal budget, right?
Right. It cuts back every program that helps people. Every one. There's no program that helps people that's not cut. And then there's stuff in there like there's a provision in the budget bill that says a federal court cannot overrule a presidential executive order. He is literally using this budget bill to try to cancel out the role that the courts are supposed to play in this system, because he's been losing for the most part all these court cases. He does this stuff that looks real bold. I'm gonna do this and y'all can't do this. And when he goes to court, most of the time he loses. Even when the judges are judges that he appointed, they rule against him because what he's doing is blatantly unconstitutional, blatantly illegal. They just came out with the decision today, federal court, to return Mahmoud Khalil.
Yes.
Right.
To return him and to drop all the charges. And the judge said his arrest was blatantly illegal. But they do this stuff because they're trying to push the envelope.
And then he tweets that another judge who's just, did he just say something that you just never hear presidents do, just come out against the judges and just say they're just doing things to, like they're not being judicial. I can't think of the words he used, but his turn is, and it's very just, it's terrible.
Hegseth, who was the Secretary of Defense, they asked him in the congressional hearing point blank, if the courts rule that the placement of these military troops is illegal, would he withdraw the troops? And he said, the president has the right to put the troops wherever he wants to put them. So he said, in essence, no. They don't want any constriction on their power. So I'm just saying all this to say, you know, that we're almost like in this situation is like before January 6th, when people were trying to warn that Trump was trying to take over the federal government, people dismissed it as like just like left-wing dreaming or something. You know, Hitler could never happen in the United States. And then January 6th came. He really was trying to overthrow the government.
That's right.
And didn't go to jail for it. He never went to jail for it. Not only did he not go to jail, he got the people out of jail that did it. He pardoned 1,500 people.
And now they're
in connection with January 6th.
Employed by ICE, and then they're suing the government.
Right. And now they ICE agents. They all got jobs. That's why they got these masks on. They don't want you to see who they are.
Mm-hmm.
They're terrorists. You know, but now, just like the Klan used to be the police, be the police by day and the Klan by night, that's what's going on here. You know, so yes, 100%. We need a Black United Front. We need a Black agenda. Then on top of that, we need a People's United Front with all other people who are going to be hurt and are being hurt by the Trump regime. And we need to defeat these people in November. There are only 2 gubernatorial elections this year, New Jersey and Virginia. They want to win them because if they can win New Jersey, that will give momentum to their movement. Trump will talk about, I'm the strongest I've ever been. I beat them in a blue state. You know, it's
you think about when, I mean, how race, I don't know, 2008, but I think when Baraka got elected, and this was to say he wanted to, of course, he came in with both houses, but he also wanted, those governorships were important, Jersey and Virginia. And then think about Mitch McConnell saying his whole job is going to make sure he undo everything that, and just how hard he worked at, and you know, to the point that he couldn't appoint a Supreme Court justice. And then this president gets in, and is he appointed 3 Supreme Court justices?
Yes, he's appointed more than any other president. At one time. He's appointed 3 people to the Supreme. No other president has appointed 3 people to the Supreme Court. All right-wing fanatics. All intent. I mean, they're one of the reasons why we're in this condition. They said that the president has immunity while he's in office. They ruled that. And then when Trump went to give his State of the Union speech, when he was going down the aisle, he stopped and shook hands with Roberts, the Chief Justice, and said, "Thank you, what you did for me." Did y'all see that?
No, but we're gonna go back and look.
Yes, it's on. It was in full view. It's not a secret thing. During the live transmission broadcast, whatever, when he's come, you know how they come in, they go down, they shake hands. He stopped at Roberts and shook his hand, said, "Thank you, what you did for me," because it was critical. Now he can break laws with impunity because the Supreme Court said so. And it said so not based on anything in the Constitution. Right. And see, this is the irony of it, because the Republicans always accuse the Democrats of what? Judicial activism. That judges appointed by the Democrats were activists, were doing stuff that wasn't in line with the Constitution, and they are the real ones that are doing
obstructing the Constitution,
because they're making stuff up out of whole cloth. There's nothing in the Constitution that says the president is immune.
or the judge that was appointed by Reagan, who just was like, this is just racist.
And then on top of it, Trump said he gonna give the cops more immunity. Now we out here fighting police brutality, talking about qualified immunity needs to end, and Trump is writing executive orders saying he's gonna give all the cops immunity. So it's a serious situation. And then, you know, I ran into a Democratic Party, I guess you could call him leader. He's one of the leaders here in Montclair. You know how they have the, you know, Donna, the municipal chair and so on and so forth.
Montclair Dems?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a person that I would not say is any kind of radical or anything like that. And he's white. And he came up to me, and this was at the parade, and he came up to me and he said, looked me straight in the eye and said, I don't know if we're going to have midterm elections. Now, I had thought about the presidential election, but I hadn't thought about midterm, that they would go so far as to try to prevent the midterm elections from taking place. Because right now, because of one of the Republicans dropping out, he had to leave office or something for some reason, they only got like a 1 or 2 person majority. Now, 1 or 2 people majority in the House, talking about the Republicans. So, you know, it's a dangerous situation. It's a very dangerous situation we have, you know.
And Ed, I don't know. You think about, I think at some point, maybe after July, we may need to just ring the alarm about voting, because people have to vote. They have to get out and vote because it makes a difference. And we've seen it in our last two governor elections here in Jersey. Our vote made a big difference. So people, this is not the time not to vote.
Yeah, man.
It was a deciding factor. That's what it was.
That exactly.
Well, enough doom and gloom.
Yeah, and
what,
like you said,
what good things have happened? Enough doom and gloom.
Talk about last night, the reparations council and their report. You want to spend a few minutes on that?
Well, yes. In fact, hold on 1 second. Hold on.
I'll post it while he's doing that because I had my hands on it. What I'm referring to is that in the
while he's getting it, I will announce that John is in Iowa with the debate team. They placed number 7.
Wow.
And there are students from 2 students from Central High. They had very dramatic interpretations at the finals. So congratulations to our Newark debate team.
Right. Congratulations to Jonathan and his award-winning debate team. People in Newark should be proud of the debate team at Science High School. I mean, that they could go to the national championships. I mean, how many tens of thousands of schools are there? You know, are they like number 7? You know,
in Iowa, that's right.
Right. So last night, the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice had a big program at the New Jersey Performing Arts Center. And the occasion was to announce the release of the report, The Nowness of Reparations. This is the culmination of 2 years of work of what was called the New Jersey Reparations Council, which consisted of, I would say, probably close to 100 people who were divided into, I think, maybe 11 different sections, each taking a different aspect of life and showing how slavery impacted that area of our lives and why we need reparations. and they made over 90 recommendations are in this book. There's a whole section on the recommendations.
Over 200 pages.
How many?
Over 200 pages, 220 some odd pages.
That's right, 229 pages. And this, I believe, I would say that this is the 1619 project of New Jersey. I think this is a very fine piece of work. We should demand that it be incorporated in every school, college, and university curriculum. And I think it will be a handbook that we will rely upon for decades to come, because the struggle for reparation is going to continue for decades. It took, we were enslaved in the Western Hemisphere for over 400 years, in the continental United States for 245 years. It's probably going to take us, a good amount of time to force these people to give us reparations. But it shouldn't take us any time to get the Democratic Party dominated legislature to pass the reparations bill, the reparations task force bill, A602 and S3164. I believe those are the Assembly and Senate numbers. And we need those bills passed, and we need those bills passed in the state legislature. We need HR 40 passed in the Congress, right, in the federal legislature, Congress of the United States.
Jeremy, did y'all have any conversation about what happened in Maryland? Why the mayor decided to make the decision that he, the governor decided, to make the decision that he made regarding reparations?
In one of the last sessions that we had, it did come up, but it wasn't. I wouldn't say it was an in-depth discussion. Okay. But we know from the reporting that Wes Moore, who is the governor of Maryland, said, now in Maryland, the legislature passed the reparations bill.
Yes, they did.
The bill to create a task force to study the issue of slavery and make recommendations on how reparations should be made to African Americans. It passed the House, passed the Senate. They sent it to Wes Moore's desk to sign. And he said, we don't need another study bill. So, I mean, I take issue with that. I mean, he has that reason. I don't think that's a valid reason, because if you can't get a reparations task force bill or commission bill passed, how do you think you're gonna get a direct payment of reparations bill passed? And there's some division, I think, within the Reparations Council on this. Some members of the reparations, because this came out last night. I'm not saying anything here that was not said in the program at the PAC last night. Some of them feel that the study that was done by the Reparations Council, this study, is the work of the task force, and we don't need a task force now. I understand why they feel that way, but I don't think, just my own experience in government, and I agree with them. I mean, if the task force is formed, all they got to do is take this and adopt it and pass it, because it is a lot of the work. They didn't do anything like this in New York. They didn't do anything like this in California, where they set up reparations commissions. They didn't. They told the commission to do the work. In fact, they only gave the New York commission a year. Now, July will be a year. I'm going to be surprised if they even have a report by July. But at the same time,
they just started having hearings.
Can people get a copy of that?
Yes. Call it. They ran out of copies at New Jersey PAC. They had such a big crowd there. The place was packed. All the balconies were packed.
Beautiful.
You know, so they ran out of the book, but I think you can call.
Yeah, I put it in the
get,
chat.
You
The
did?
PDF is
Okay,
available
good.
from their webpage. New Jersey
Good.
Reparations Council. You know, they have their webpage is up to date. You go right to report, and the PDF will come up.
Right.
Oh, so you can
Like-
print it, but you can't. But can you get a copy of the printed one?
You got to ask them for one. They're going to print some more. They're going to print some more. They probably didn't expect to have the size crowd that they had, so they ran out. I know for a fact they had lists. They had people on lists to get, so you can get it. I think everybody should try to get the printed report, in addition to having, you know, the online, because you can read it online. But it's very nice. It's very well done, and it's chock full of information, and all the arguments that we could make for reparations are in here. I said last night, for the record, that I still support Shavonda Sumter's bill, the Reparations Task Force bill, and I think as far as POP is concerned, it's still on our agenda to fight for that bill and get it passed, just like it's on our agenda to fight for HR 40 and to get that passed. You know, but it was a great event last night. Were you there, Donna? Ed was there. Ed and Kim was there. What did you think, Ed?
Yeah, I mean, like I told the mayor, I thought it was awesome, man. You know,
The mayor tore it up, didn't he? He tore it up last night, didn't he?
I thought the mayor dropped the mic and left. You know what I mean?
Yes, yes.
You know, and I thought, you know, you sort of lit the fire for Boyer. And once you lit the fire for Boyer, he just went nuts, man. You know what I mean? And you know, at that point, there was going to be some cussing going on, like, you know, like, yo, y'all, you know, them white folks in there was like, yo, what is going on in here? You know, but you know, because it started, you know, because it started like a slow boil.
Right.
Then once the mayor came, you know, just like Brother Muhammad said, he said, well, I think that's the time where everybody can just say amen and leave.
That's right.
Right. But then once you started lightning, and then once you gave the ball to Boyer was like, yo, he went off, you know, and like the mayor said, he agreed with a lot of what Boyer was saying, you know, and just in terms of where we at, like I agree. I was able to get a copy of the book, and I think that I think a lot of what's in here is awesome, right? And but unfortunately, man, I think that, you know, and I love the story you told about how you met Queen Mother Moore, right? You know, I think that, you know, that's sort of my introduction to how I came to this whole argument of reparations and support. It was through her.
Retell the story.
And
Chairman, do you hear
Ed,
that?
go ahead, Ed. Finish, Ed, what you were saying.
And so for me, you know, I thought that, you know, when you was dropping that bit of science, I think that for the conscious community, most of us got, you know, that whole reparations movement from Queen Mother Moore. Just like you said when you met her as a young man in the halls, right? So that's sort of all of us came to it, you know, when you think about it. And here we are today, you know, when you were laying out, you know, all of the people who started it are now dead, right? And then you know, you think about where we are today. So we got to say, you know, so when you say, how did that go last night? I think it went well. And we got to say thank you to, you know, to Brian Haygood for using his organization, right, to get that argument going in the state of New Jersey in the way that it did. And again, Larry, I most certainly appreciate, the way you handle history and the way you give everybody a history lesson in terms of understanding how reparations, got to the point where it is now. So I thought it was great last night, man.
I thought it was too. I really, Zaid, were you there?
My back went out. No, I wasn't.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Be able to go.
Chairman, do you feel, I know early on and reparations has been given to different communities. I know to the Japanese, I believe, the Jewish. But when we start talking about in our community, people thought that we shouldn't use that word reparations.
Mm-hmm.
Do you still hear that in 2025?
Yes. That's been the whole problem for the last 3 years. And it hasn't been solved. Remember when the Institute started and they started that campaign, say the word reparations?
That's right.
They still haven't said the word reparations. And this is my fear. My fear is that they're going to take things that are not reparations, that are not called reparations. For instance, baby bonds. And even the woman who spoke to the baby bonds issue, she said, this is not reparations. Did you hear her say that? She said, this is not reparations. She said, this is an investment to help children once they become young adults. They get these bonds when they're infants, and when the bonds mature, you know, by the time they're, 21 years old or whatever, they have some money to start out with. They're not starting at zero, as she said. But she said, this is not reparations. That's why I want to say, because I know these programs are recorded, I want to say for the record, I support all the recommendations that are made here. They're all good recommendations, but I still demand reparations. Reparations, as far as I'm concerned, is returning to us the value of the labor that was stolen from our enslaved ancestors. And we know that they were conscious of the fact that this had to be done. Why? Because at the end of the Civil War, just before the war ended, when Sherman was on his march to the South, through the South, when he got to South Carolina, he met with Black ministers. This is a true story. He met with Black ministers and he said, what do you want? And the minister said, we want land. And he said, all right. It was a military order. It wasn't voted on by Congress. It was an executive order from the president. It was a military order from the commanding general of that campaign, who was William Tecumseh Sherman. It was General Order Number 15. With the stroke of a pen, he expropriated 400,000 acres of land along the coast of South Carolina and Georgia. And he gave it to the enslaved people. And they plotted out 40-acre plots. That's where 40 acres comes from. And then Thaddeus Stevens, who was in Congress, who was one of what they called the radical Republicans. They were the Republicans in the Republican Party that didn't want gradual abolition. They wanted immediate, total abolition for enslaved people, and they wanted reparations for them. Thaddeus Stevens introduces H.R. 29, which says that every formerly enslaved person, and I think the original was for those who fought in the war, or their survivor, if they were killed, would receive 40 acres and $50. We say 40 acres and a mule because once they got the land, back then you had to have a beast of burden to pull that plow. You needed an ox or you needed a mule. So the Union Army would give extra mules that they had that were used to pull cannon. They would give them to the enslaved people to pull their plows. That's where 40 acres and a mule comes from. But the actual legislation was 40 acres and $50. And when Congress was on the verge of trying to pass this, Lincoln was assassinated. Lincoln was assassinated, and his vice president, Andrew Johnson, becomes president. And he's a Southern sympathizer. He's from Tennessee. And one of his first acts was executive orders to reverse General Order number 15 and return all that land to the slave masters. And then in South Carolina, they put up some resistance. They put up some armed resistance. And so Johnson orders the Union Army, the very Union Army that just months earlier, Black people were joining to fight the Confederacy, was sent down to South Carolina to put down the armed resistance. See, people don't tell this part of the story because it's not a happy part. And guess who was commanding the federal troops that went down to put down the rebellion against the Black people who didn't want to give back the land? They sent General O. Howard. Howard is a familiar name, right? His portrait hangs in Howard University.
I was gonna say Howard University. Oh,
That's right. And he was the one that was ordered to go down, take troops, go down there and get that land back. You know, and so people knew that there had to be some kind of economic stake. And so since then, people have been demanding reparations since the legislation, since the General Order 15, you know, and you know, I feel some kind of way because I'm all for the Juneteenth holiday. But first of all, we got to set the record straight. Black people were not freed on Juneteenth. Juneteenth was when General Granger took 10,000 troops into Texas to essentially read to those folks, to tell those folks they were free by virtue of the Emancipation Proclamation. But slavery does not end.
Black troops too, by the way.
That's right. And slavery does not end until the passage of the 13th Amendment in December of 1865. That's when slavery ends officially in the United States. You know, and I kind of feel
New Jersey being one of the last.
the last northern state. The last. New Jersey was not in the original 27 state majority to adopt the 13th Amendment.
That's right.
People want to talk about Juneteenth, the Emancipation Proclamation. When Lincoln issues the Emancipation Proclamation, the state legislature in New Jersey nullified, they took a vote to nullify Lincoln's power to emancipate slaves in this state. See, this is the irony of the Civil War. The irony of the Civil War is that there were states in the Union that still had slavery while the Union Army was fighting the Confederate Army to end slavery. What they called the border states. They were part of the Union, but they still had slavery. But they weren't vamped on because they were in the Union. At first, they were neutral, and then some of them were convinced to, in fact, become part of the Union, you know, but they had slavery, you know. So I think one of the things we have to do is to make sure that Juneteenth becomes synonymous with reparations. I don't care if it takes the rest of our lives. We should always raise the demand for reparations. And people say it can't happen. That's the same thing people said in 1660, when the colonies voted laws that said any child born of an enslaved woman would be enslaved in perpetuity. That meant forever. In 1660, every colony passed laws to say any child born of an enslaved woman that child would be enslaved in perpetuity forever. But our people demanded freedom. And they kept demanding freedom. They kept fighting for freedom. Look, in 1857, think about this. In 1857, it was the Dred Scott decision when the Supreme Court said, and Justice Tawney, who was the Chief Justice, his statue is still in the Congress.
That's right.
Tawney said, Black people have no rights that white people are bound to respect. Dred Scott and his wife had escaped, I think it was to Kansas. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. I think they had escaped either Kansas or Missouri. Maybe it was Missouri. And their slave master demanded their return.
On the basis of the Fugitive Slave Act.
On the basis of the Fugitive Slave Act. That's right. So when the Supreme Court says this in 1857, it must have seemed like there was no hope. The Supreme Court just said, we don't have no rights. We're not citizens. We're not even human beings. But just think, that same year, Frederick Douglass gives the West Indian Emancipation Speech in Canandaigua, New York. And he says in August of 1857, if there is no struggle, there is no progress.
That's right.
Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did and it never will. And more than that, he said this, the limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those that they oppress. And a year later, the Civil War starts. Just think, the Supreme Court said, y'all are slaves forever. 3 years later, the Civil War starts. 5 years later, the Civil War is over and the 13th Amendment is passed. So just because something might not seem possible at the moment doesn't mean it's impossible. I remember when we started the anti-apartheid movement back in the 70s.
Remember that?
Mandela was in prison.
My God.
The first button POP ever made wasn't a POP button. The first button we ever made was a Free Nelson Mandela button. But in the back of our minds, once we learned how devilishly, how demonically oppressed the Black people of South Africa were by the white people, some of us said in the back of our minds, Mandela will never get out of there. And then what happens? February 11th, 1990, he's walking out of prison hand in hand with Winnie Mandela.
The day after Mike Tyson gets his behind beat.
Yeah.
You know,
and
so
Julie's in the city, New York City.
You know, the mayor said something very instructive at that program last night. What did he say, Ed, about imagination?
It's the first thing they take from oppressed people.
Huh?
And we said, this is what he said today. He says the first thing they take away from oppressed people
is their imagination, right? Because if you can't imagine yourself free, how you gonna be free?
You ain't gonna do it. That's right.
And we thanked him for being him. He said, yeah, I appreciate your thanks, but I have to believe in myself first. That's right.
That's right. That's right. Mm-hmm. So, you know, this thing, I told people in Baltimore today, I said, don't despair. We survived Washington. We survived Jefferson. We survived Jackson. We survived Nixon. We survived Reagan. And we're going to survive Donald Trump. It's not the end of the world. Yes, it's bad. Is it bad? Yes, it's bad. Are some of us going to be casualties? Yes, some of us are going to be casualties. Are some of us going to go to jail? Yes, some of us are going to go to jail. Some of us may get hurt and some of us may get killed. But that's the price of freedom. That's why Malcolm X said,
the price.
See, you only want to say the part about Malcolm said, Malcolm talked about the importance of history. Malcolm also said the price of freedom is death. And people don't want to say that part.
Larry,
but it's the truth.
I was going to say part two. We're going to have a history lesson every week. I was waiting for you. We have to continue
Yeah,
this conversation. Go ahead. I was going to make an announcement. Go ahead.
no,
I'm sorry.
listen. We have never gone this far over, Larry. But you was teaching so hard, Larry. We could not stop.
Couldn't break it.
So listen, man. We appreciate everybody that was on. Obviously, we want to thank the mayor for coming back through and picking up the mayor's form. So we look forward to being on with him in July and sort of getting an update as to where we are with how we're going to move forward as it relates to us supporting Mickey Sherrill and the Democratic Party. And
voting November 4th. November 4th is election day.
So he talked about this major meeting that's going to happen on November 4th at Reverend Boyer's church. So we'll look to have Reverend Boyer on so we can get more information about it, so that we can alert the community to make sure that everybody shows up, so we can have this conversation about how do we organize and how do we start to develop this Black United Front to make sure that we're in line to support the election, so that we can stop of course, Jack Citarelli. So Zaid, you want to start thanking the other people that was on as well?
The team from Imagine, great conversation. They're an important resource in terms of grief support and grief training. They are now in Newark after being based in Mountainside, New Jersey. They're an important resource in the Newark community-based violence intervention ecosystem. And our guests from Giffords, Jordan Costa, and Jermaine Belcher from the HAVI, the Health Alliance Against Violence Intervention, right? Good conversation about how national partners, national resources on the community side help the community do their work and move the issue and get the resources that we need. Great conversation. And of course, Dean will just turn the volume all the way up around the election and around our fight for reparations. They stole us, they sold us, they owe us.
That's right. Teach.
So anything you want to say lastly, Donna?
Yeah, I just want to make an announcement. We have called the University of Orange here, and they're going to be holding classes this summer. You can go to their website, their Facebook page, and the theme is called Holding the Center at the Confluence of Crises, Understanding and Deploying a Root Shock Informed Approach. Classes begin on July 28th and they run to August 18th. So go ahead and register.
Root shock. You heard that, Donna, right? You know where that's coming from. We got to get the sister on that.
Oh, she'll be here. And so I've sent that to be put on the page. I also just want to remind people, please do not wait until the last minute. If you got to change your place of registration to vote, do that now. Election day is November 4th, and that's in a blink of an eye. Be a part of this election. And we've already seen what happened with the presidential, and we know we don't want it to happen with the governor. Get involved, come out and cast your vote early, do everything that you have to do, but be a part of the process.
All right. And again, as Larry said, we want to say congratulations to John, our other co-host, to him and his students. We want to say, thank you for always making Newark look good wherever you take our kids.
That's right.
Thank you.
Praise the teacher.
All right.
And we got to thank our manager in the back who make us look good.
Yeah. And of course, we want to thank our big brother, Larry. We pray, Larry, that you never lose your mind, brother. That you forever stay in your right mind,
I may have lost it already, brother. That might be one of the reasons I talk the way I talk, because I did lose my mind.
we appreciate. Hey, Larry, when you come out of your black mind, that's when we know you lost it. But as long as we know you're good.
The liberation of wisdom.
So we our brother for that. And as my brother Zaid said, we'll catch y'all next week. We'll catch them
in the whirlwind. Ed, 1 second before you adjourn. Let me just thank Zaid. I want to thank Baba Zaid for posting the article remembering Jan Carew, the gentle revolutionary. Zaid has had this campaign to have 100 posts for 100 days to
Oh,
celebrate
yeah.
the 100th anniversary of Malcolm X's birthday. And he posted this one remembering Jan Carew. Jan Carew was my advisor at Princeton University. Jan Carew is a Guyanese writer and activist. He was an advisor to Kwame Nkrumah.
That's right.
In the struggle for independence. He was an advisor to Fidel Castro in the revolutionary struggle to liberate Cuba. And I did not know that he knew Malcolm. He did not, he talked to me about a lot of things, but he didn't talk to me about his relationship with Malcolm X, you know. And I have to say, Zaid, thank you very much. It brought back many memories that I had, you know, what was, and I'm going to say this, and I don't say, I say this in the spirit of accuracy and revelation. You know, Jan Carew, when I met him, he was somewhat critical of the Black struggle of here in the United States. And to my dismay, he was critical of Amiri Baraka. Now, you know, I had a relationship with Amiri Baraka,
right?
And I was not happy with this criticism. So I was actually trying to arrange a meeting between Baraka and Jan Carew.
They could struggle that out.
But unfortunately, I ended up leaving Princeton in the fall. The year I got there in August, and I decided to leave in the fall, in October of 1971. So I never was able to make that meeting between Carew, and because I thought of both men as great revolutionaries, and I thought that we should all, just like you said, Ed, we needed a united front, you know, in this struggle. So thank you, Baba Zaid. And folks, go on Facebook. The title of the article is "Remember Jan Carew, the Gentle Revolutionary."
That should be on our Malcolm X Commemoration Committee page, but that got banned by Facebook. So I do every day. I do a post a day for the centennial of Malcolm X, and it was Jan Carew. The context of the post is that there was a delegation. We had an Afro-American delegation that went to Grenada to honor Malcolm and Malcolm's mother, Louise Langdon Norton Little, who was from Grenada. There's a Malcolm X Memorial Foundation being developed in Grenada for him and his mother's honor. Jan Carew was the first Black radical scholar to lift up Mama Louise, the bold, courageous Garveyite that gave birth to Malcolm. Long before this stuff. And get his book, Ghosts in Our Blood, on the subject.
All right, y'all. There it is. So y'all got all y'all texting me now. Y'all got enough clips.
Is gonna be fat and long today.
Take all those clips y'all talking about taking, take them all, and just y'all put Larry all over Instagram. All right, y'all got my blessing.
That's right.
Catch y'all next week.
All right. Peace.
You don't